From health crises to royal returns and from controversial photos to the PR disasters for Meghan and Harry, this year has been extraordinary, even by recent royal standards. This is the story of the year so far. Hello and welcome to a special episode of Palace Confidential. I'm Jo Elvin and I'll be talking you through some of the year's biggest royal talking points and our experts' reactions to them. As always, a reminder to like and subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals YouTube channel, and that way you will never miss another episode. Well, we started the year with a huge double shock on the same day. Before we knew just how serious it was, here's Rebecca English revealing how she heard the news and Richard Eden and Natasha Livingston reacting to it.
It was a genuine coincidence, and even in palace circles they were saying it was an unfortunate coincidence, but it was really a kind of perfect storm of events. Obviously they wanted with Catherine to get her into hospital and to have her operation and to know it was a success before they announced the news. The King actually only got his diagnosis on Wednesday, and doctors immediately said, look, you need to scale back on some of your public engagements. And they realised the next day he was holding a big event at Dumfries House and had cabinet and ministers flying up from London, so they were going to have to counsel a lot of people. Yeah. And they've learned, I think, from the experience of the past when, as you rightly allude to, the rumours about the late Queen and Prince Philip would go wild because they didn't want to comment on it. People would start wildly speculating, and they didn't want to get into that sort of territory. So it was like, look, actually, we're going to announce this. We're going to be straight about it, because we have got to counsel so many people. We don't want the rumour mill to start again. But it was, it was unfortunate timing, and even the palace were remarking it was a bit of a more dramatic day than they'd entirely wanted it to be.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we know details about the King's health issue, but we are left with, and we won't speculate because we don't know what exactly is wrong with Catherine, and unless they decide to announce it. But Natasha, it does sound serious. The recovery time is quite long.
Yeah, she's going to be staying in hospital for 10 to 14 days, and then we've been told not to expect her at any royal engagements until potentially after Easter, and that includes any overseas travel. And obviously Rebecca reported before Christmas that there was an expected trip to Rome, which presumably is on hold now. And the Princess of Wales has become a really important figure in the royal family, so it's really feeling that sort of impact of the stripped back monarchy now that she's kind of out of action.
Well, and of course, by default, it rather means that William is out of action.
Yeah, he's going to be looking after the Princess of Wales and also their children, and so he's kind of pushing back some of his engagements. So yeah, it's really going to have a big impact. All of the royal correspondents were invited to the sort of media, pen sounds a bit grim, but it's a sort of position that they made outside
You know
the
your
hospital.
place, Natasha.
Yes.
Get in that pen. Yeah.
And it was really so there was a kind of vantage point for kind of photographers and broadcasters and journalists to see the hospital, see any comings and goings, but also mainly for the privacy of the princess, but other people at the hospital, so they were kind of a step back. But yeah, so we were all kind of there in the pen when we all got the news about the King, and it really was it was quite astonishing, really, to get so much news. It really was very dramatic.
It is quite dramatic, isn't it? Because, Richard, in your newsletter this week, and a reminder that you can sign up to that below, you talk about the challenges of losing 2 senior members of the firm, and actually effectively 3 at the moment.
I think for me it just highlights the precarious sort of nature of King Charles's vision of this slimmed down monarchy, which, remember, his vision for the future was the King and Queen Camilla, and then it was Prince William, Catherine, and then Prince Harry and Meghan. Well, they're gone, and now you've got, almost 3 people out of action. And it sort of, for me, emphasises how that vision is a very dangerous one. And, personally, I think there's much more strength in the monarchy to have a wider circle of people involved.
The difficulty is, and Princess Anne's been asked about this before when they said, are you going to be stepping up now? And she said, how can I step up more than I am? I already do 400 engagements a year, massive commitments. I'm doing everything I can. So,
remember we discussed last week how Prince Richard, the Duke of Gloucester, who's in his 70s,
yes.
He carried out so many engagements. It was more than Prince William last year. So, people like him carry on doing lots of hard work, but, they're the supporting act, and it's those principles that we need.
That week, we also learnt that the Queen had been furious when Harry and Meghan had decided to name their daughter Lilibet, a personal nickname for the Queen herself. Robert Hardman broke the news in his biography of the King called Charles III. Here he is explaining where the story came from, and afterwards we'll hear the reactions of Rebecca and Richard Eden.
One of the things that's attracted a lot of attention is this story about the naming of the Sussex's second child, Lilibet. And at the time, some people thought that's a slightly interesting choice of name. It was obviously a unique name. It was the Queen's childhood nickname. No one else has ever been called Lilibet. And there was, soon afterwards, at the time, the Sussexes had issued a statement saying, that the Queen had been supportive about this choice of name. And then it was the BBC that reported, actually, no, the Queen wasn't asked. At which point the Sussexes that reached for the legal red button and started issuing legal proceedings. And at which point the palace was not willing to endorse the Sussexes' version of events. There was a resounding silence, and as a result the legal action didn't happen. The issue really was not the naming, the choosing of the name Lilibet. The Queen is, she's put up with all sorts of things through her long life. That wasn't, for her, that was not the thing that caused the reaction inside the palace. What you can't ever do is you can't put words in the mouth of the Queen. You can't say, she said this, she did that, if she didn't. And that was where the crux of the issue was, the fact that this choice of name that had clearly been presented as a fait accompli, and perhaps she did say, oh, that's very nice, or oh, how interesting, or she'd often say how interesting actually to things. That's as maybe, but it's when she was being expected and the palace were expected to say that this had happened and it hadn't happened, that's what got her upset.
Oh, Richard, this was quite the revelation, wasn't it?
It really was, and this for me has, it really, in a way, it's sort of changed our view of many people of Queen Elizabeth, because lots of people sort of saw her as a sort of sweet old grandma, and I think Prince Harry and Meghan were very keen to put this idea that, yeah, she was the sweet grandma that would approve anything we did. Harry would always talk about the sort of men in grey suits who would keep me from her and this sort of thing. Well, actually, it turns out, she really was an iron fist beneath that velvet glove. And, this was her being angry about something. This is what Robert reports. And this is over the choice of name. And it wasn't just over the choice of name, which I think she may have felt was presumptuous and was, perhaps an attempt to sort of take advantage, really, to sort of make commercial advantage. Remember, they'd already registered the name Lilibet as a domain name for a website, but also it was it was something which just, I think, angered her on many different levels.
I'm going to ask the question for balance, because I've seen a lot of people on Twitter, X, saying things like, in any other walk of life, it's a great compliment. In any other walk of life, you don't need to ask anyone's permission to name your child whatever name you want. Why has this caused such a problem?
And it's a fair question, but I think if they stuck to the name Elizabeth, then it wouldn't have been, because so many of the Queen's female grandchildren and great-grandchildren have Elizabeth as a middle name in her honour. But Lilibet was a really personal, affectionate nickname given to her by her parents. It was used by her grandfather, her husband, and really her closest friends and relatives. So to have something so personal adopted by somebody else, it just feels a little uncomfortable, and I know she was uncomfortable about it.
Then came Sarah Ferguson's diagnosis of another bout of cancer, this time affecting her skin. Here Rebecca English explains more. Richard Eden reacts to the news, while Richard Kay addresses the persistent rumours that Fergie may remarry her Royal Lodge roommate, Prince Andrew.
So she announced at the weekend that she'd been diagnosed with malignant melanoma, which actually is a very serious form of skin cancer, I know, because I've had it in my own family. and it was caught because she was going in for further reconstructive surgery after her breast cancer and her mastectomy. And the dermatologist was really on the button and said, there's some things that I'm not quite happy about, can we get them checked out? And I was told by a friend of hers she found out over the new year that it was cancer, but she's going to have to go some other investigations to make sure they have got everything out. But I know the doctors are very hopeful they have. So, and she's determined to get back on television screens again, to again use this another personal health crisis as a means to encourage other people to get themselves checked out and hopefully save lives as well.
Yeah, I mean, melanoma is one of those sort of silently scary, really malicious diseases. I hope she's doing well. But Richard, as Rebecca alludes to, it's going to slow down hopes for that media career to take off. But it's also been widely reported that Sarah's been keeping an eye on Prince Andrew, who's had his share of problems.
Well, obviously Prince Andrew's been going through a difficult time recently. You know, he doesn't have a job anymore, and we've had all the revelations from those court documents in America, so she's been supporting him. At the same time, remember, she's only recently recovered from her cancer treatment, and she's started working very hard. She's become the sort of breadwinner of the family, so to speak, and she's been doing all sorts of TV appearances, and she's working with her books and that sort of thing. So it has come at a terrible time for her. But you know what she's like. I think she's already been to a clinic in Austria to convalesce, and I'm sure she'll be kind of back at it before too long. She's one of those people, you just sort of nothing will keep her down.
She's definitely got a just get on with it spirit.
She really has.
Speaking of that, Richard Kay, this leads me very nicely to a piece you wrote this week for the Mail's new subscription platform, Mail Plus, that intrigued me greatly. You have a novel solution.
Well, it's not an original solution. The idea is that maybe one way out of the Duke and Duchess's current predicament would be for them to remarry, because that would at least give Andrew, I think, some sort of public validation that at least there's someone who is very much standing by him.
Sorry.
It might also deal with the issue over housing. Is he really going to be able to stay on in Royal Lodge if he and Fergie were to become a married couple once again? That might deter some of the enemies within the court who would like to evict him from that property. I mean, as I say, it's not original. We've been down this road many times before, but the fact is they have been together for the best part of 40 years. I think we're coming up next year to the 40th anniversary of when they first met, although they knew each other as children. And despite divorce, despite all the difficulties and the embarrassments that Fergie heaped on the royal family, and indeed Andrew, they have remained together.
Now, would it be, though, a marriage of rekindled love or a marriage of convenience?
That's a very good point. I suspect more of the latter. I mean, I think there is a great deal of affection between the two of them still. Neither of them have found anyone else they want to make their life partner. I think there are various issues, of course, raised there. One thing which I didn't touch on, but which has occurred to me, is if she were to marry and remarry Andrew, would she get her HRH back? I suspect not.
Wow.
But it was taken away from her when she divorced him.
What are your memories as a young reporter? Because you were at their wedding.
Well, yeah. I wasn't that young, but I was covering the.
Are you
I
a
did
vampire,
cover the
Richard
wedding.
Kay?
Yeah. Seen my picture in the attic. Yes, I remember it being an incredibly hot but very joyful day. I mean, London really was en fête, just as it had been 5 years earlier with Charles and Diana's wedding, but there was something intrinsically different this time, because here was a couple who were manifestly very much in love, and it was one of the reasons why no one has really grasped why they ever split up. But they were in love, clearly. They couldn't keep their hands off one another when they were out together in public, and they seemed a team, a proper team. And by then, tragically, Charles and Diana were no longer really much of a team. And so I think there was an awful lot invested in Andrew and Fergie, and there were great hopes for the future, but sadly they all dissipated within 2 or 3 years.
Do you know what I remember about Andrew and Fergie's wedding? My cat died that night.
Oh.
We were in Australia watching it in the middle of the night live.
Well, I was actually there too, not as a reporter in the Abbey, but
Page boy.
as a child in the
Baby
crowds
arms.
in the Mall.
Yeah.
And
Why
I'm
am
afraid
I not surprised?
I was. I'm afraid.
Budding diarist even then, Richard.
I was so short that my memory of the day is using a periscope. So everything I saw of the carriages rushing past was through this little periscope to see
Did
over
you have
the
your little
crowds.
Union Jack hat on?
I may have done. We were there with some friends visiting from Canada. So it was a great day.
I love that. I love that. I need photos. We need next week the montage of Richard Eden
And your little
at Andrew and
shorts.
Sarah's wedding. But what do you think? You know, we've royal weddings always a boost for the economy, a boost for morale. But what would a royal re-wedding be like? How would that be received?
Well, the mind boggles. But remember, we've had register office weddings before, of course, with our king. King Charles and Camilla got married at Windsor Register Office, and they had a service of blessing afterwards. So there's no reason why Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, might not have a service of blessing for...
Just nip round to the garden again?
Well, it might be a backyard ceremony like it was, for Harry and
Allegedly,
Meghan a few days earlier.
Yeah.
So he's available for all these kind of ceremonies. So, I think why not have a party again? I mean, maybe not. I'm not sure we'll have crowds in the Mall, frankly, but it could be, maybe a few crowds outside Windsor Register Office.
Don't pretend you wouldn't be there with your periscope again.
Well, come on, the guest list would be great, wouldn't it? Who would be on that guest list?
Oh my gosh, Rebecca, you know the Duchess a bit. Well, probably more than a bit. If you were a very close friend of hers, what would you advise her?
Run. I mean, flippantly, but I'm not sure it would be good for either of them, I have to say. Then they'd be really entwined together, and if things ever go wrong, they're both going to get pulled down, aren't they?
Where's your sense of romance? Come on.
I'm not the
Where
most
do you think they
romantic
are at the
type
moment,
anyway,
Rebecca?
Richard.
They're pretty down, aren't they?
Yeah, well,
There's only one way, and it's up.
That's true. I mean, obviously, there is a friendship there, isn't there? That clearly gives them both comfort. And to be fair, they've been great parents. Their daughters are a real credit to them, so they've done something right. I'm not sure they need to go a little bit further and kind of put an official stamp on it.
But let's remember that they've been acting, like a married couple for years. I mean, I remember Rebecca, revealing a great story that they'd bought a Swiss ski chalet together. This was years ago. It's since been sold, as well as living together at Windsor. So they're almost like a married couple now, aren't they?
Actually, it just reminded me, my young son saw the story I'd written about Fergie this week, and he said, he couldn't pronounce Fergie, he said, who's this Fergus woman? And I said, well, she's Prince Andrew's ex-wife, but they still live together. And he just looked at me and went, why?
That sounds like Prince Philip. He always kept saying, why?
You see,
my
the children
gosh.
say it as they see it, don't they?
Well, look, let's be serious for a minute, because obviously Richard Kay, after both Sarah's cancer diagnoses, she's used the opportunity to raise awareness of those conditions, breast cancer, skin cancer, and the King seemingly, or at least, followed her lead when talking about his enlarged prostate. It seems unthinkable that this would have happened even 10 years ago.
Well, I mean, there's a kind of a myth going around that the royals never shared details about their ailments. I mean, I remember when both the Queen and her mother, the Queen Mother, had hip work in the Queen Mother's case, and the Queen had knee problems, and the palace were up front and explained what they were having done. I think we've been slightly blindsided because when Prince Philip was alive, there was a lot of controversy when details of an ailment he had at the time was revealed, and he took grave exception to it and said that his privacy had been invaded, and ever since the palace then started getting very cautious about what they said about royal ill health, and this has been quite a step change in this last couple of weeks with the revelations.
I think they did learn a big lesson after Queen Elizabeth when she had an overnight hospital stay, and they not just kept it from us, they deliberately steered us in the wrong direction, and then it emerged she had been. And there was a great deal of anger. We're saying if our head of state is... We understand that she wouldn't tell us every appointment she goes to, but if our head of state is overnight having hospital tests, really, we should know about it.
In early February, the news about the King got worse as it was revealed that he was undergoing treatment for an undisclosed form of cancer. It was a huge shock for royal watchers. Here, Rebecca and Richard Eden give us their immediate reactions.
I mean, a cancer diagnosis is a shock for anyone. It's a shock for him, it's a shock for his wife, it's a shock for his family. But they really have caught it at a very, very early stage. It's not prostate cancer, but it was discovered as a result of that operation. He went in for the other week for an enlarged prostate. And so my understanding is they found it at a very, very early stage and that the prognosis is incredibly good.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because the palace had to decide, particularly in the wake of that openness about his previous condition, they've had to decide how to break the news. And I suppose one factor has been that they haven't wanted the king to be caught in like an underhand way going in for treatment.
Exactly, and that's actually something they've stressed to us they really want to avoid. And in being as open as they could be, they have, begged people to give him the privacy he needs and deserves, and actually is entitled to, while he undergoes this treatment. And I think, we think back a few years, they would never have even discussed this normally. And I know there are some people who said, why haven't they gone further than confirm he's got cancer? Why haven't they said what kind of cancer it was? And as someone at the palace said to me, it's a real balance between him being head of state and actually his rights as an individual to keep his private medical information to himself. So, I think they've juggled that balance very well, I have to say, in what they've told us.
It's interesting. I've just come from doing morning television where Richard Madeley said there was a time at TVAM when you were not even allowed to say the word cancer on air. So now we're at a point where our royal family's being open about such a condition. And I think, Richard, it's probably not an exaggeration to say that the news has shocked the nation. And I think a lot of the inquisitiveness is about concern.
It really has been a shock. I mean, there's something about the royal family that sort of hits you, almost as if it's a member of your own family. And there's barely a family in Britain that hasn't been touched by cancer at some point. That word, as you said, was almost taboo. The C word, people didn't use the word cancer. And let's be clear how sort of historically important this is. There has never been a monarch of our country where they've said that he had cancer. I mean, remember that, in the case of his grandfather, George VI, he underwent an operation and they just said that it was to do with structural changes to his lungs. He actually had a lung removed because of it was so cancerous.
That is a structural change.
Yeah, and he wasn't even told himself what had happened exactly. So, for them to make this announcement in this way, it really is sort of momentous.
One result of this news was that the role and responsibility of Prince William was thrust into the limelight. Here, Richard Kay discusses that and the chatter among constitutional experts about the possibility of a regency.
It is a big moment, of course it is, and he knows that he's going to have to step up. But quite how it's going to be played out, as Rebecca says, we're not entirely sure yet. The palace love playing everything down. Everything is always calm, but underneath the surface, their feet are going like that. And there must be concern about how they're going to actually manage public expectation, how they're going to manage the roles of the senior royals in the coming weeks and probably months, as Rebecca says.
Well, and also they probably won't be too fond of a lot of the chat going on at the moment from constitutional experts who are, one described where we were as a soft regency, another as this being a potential constitutional crisis, putting a burden on William. What do you think is the facts in that?
Well, I don't think we're at a constitutional crisis yet. But we are in uncharted waters. We haven't had a monarch receiving this kind of treatment since the days of King George VI. And in those days, that was the late Queen's father, of course, the public wasn't really kept informed of what his illness was. He had lung cancer. So they are being very open, which I think is they should be commended for in keeping the public abreast of what's going on with his illness. But the issue of regency is bound to crop up, because if Charles is to become incapacitated, then things will have to pass to William, and they'll have to pass rapidly.
Prince Harry, meanwhile, rushed to the UK to see his father after the cancer diagnosis. But their meeting ended up being shorter than many would have expected. Here, Rebecca and Richard's Kay and Eden give their analysis of the story.
The point is made that it was a very whirlwind trip, and there's been some speculation about whether it was 30 or 45 minutes spent with his father at Clarence House, but it was a very short amount of time given the amount of time he spent to get here. Now, I wouldn't necessarily personally read too much into that, because I know the King was tired and he was always planning to go to Sandringham that day. And I do think there's significance. He made a point of spending time with his son, especially given what's happened over the last few years.
It's a long way to come for 30 to 45 minutes.
Well, and actually I asked someone the other day, very well placed, and said, what do you think it was? And immediately they snapped back, guilt.
Really?
There's a lot of, I think while the King has always made clear that he wants to leave the door ajar for Harry, and we discussed that on this programme on Tuesday, didn't we? I think there's a lot of people in the wider royal household that find what's happened over the last few years, not just in relation with the King and the Prince of Wales, but also with Queen Elizabeth, very difficult to forgive.
I wonder if any of those people spoke to Robert Jobson for today's Daily Mail piece, Richard Kay. It's a very interesting picture of the visit, saying, and I quote, "The King was unhappy about what amounted to a fait accompli served up by an emotional but well-meaning son." Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it's a very interesting insight into what may have taken place. I think the thing one shouldn't stress about the King and his relationships with his children is that despite being a loving father to two sons, he has throughout his life, it has been regimented and organised for him. Everything works to an endless series of deadlines. That helicopter was clattering around, ready to go. The King is the kind of person who would have said, I don't want it wasting fuel. We've got to get going. He hates keeping people waiting. He hates being kept waiting. And the other person to consider in that meeting yesterday is, of course, the Queen. Now, the Queen has less reason to welcome Prince Harry with open arms. She was treated disgracefully by him in his memoir, and she would have been very anxious about the amount of time that Harry would have spent with Charles, because she wouldn't want Charles to get upset or stressed about issues if indeed that was on Harry's mind. Let's take it at face value. Let's assume Harry was there doing his filial duty. He would have, after the King phoned him, which we know he did over the weekend at the time of his illness diagnosis, one can picture Harry saying, Pa, I'll be there, I'll come at once. And Harry saying, dear boy, darling boy, there's no need for that, but if you want to come, of course, you'll be very welcome. But just how welcome and for how long, it is throwing up endless speculation. I mean, why didn't Harry spend the night at Clarence House, his old bedroom upstairs? Those bedrooms no longer exist.
Well, it's a dressing room now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And why didn't Charles say, come up to Sandringham and let's have a few days in Norfolk? We don't think that happened either. So there are all these imponderals, but yes, it was a very interesting insight.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it, Richard Eden? A half-hour meeting and a reported hotel stay. The family's got more rooms in their houses than anyone in Britain. It doesn't really feel like the open arms welcome that perhaps Harry might have wanted.
No, but it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, we all understand that Harry, when he was told that his father had this diagnosis, will have wanted to be with him. But there was something about the way that the press statement was made very quickly, within half an hour. It sort of felt like he also wanted it to be known that he had to go there. It was, for public consumption. And that sort of made people uncomfortable, I think. And then he comes, and who, wants to meet Harry now? That's the thing. Remember, he's lost touch with a lot of his old friends. In his memoirs, he admitted that people contacted him after the appalling Oprah Winfrey interview to tell him, we thought what you did was wrong. He mentioned the Van Cutsem family, some of his best old friends. And, these are people that normally he'd want to stay, but, perhaps his old friends don't really want to see him now. It
feels like it's just not his country anymore in a way.
That's the thing. It's tricky. He's taken himself away from that. And and now he's a bit of a stranger when he comes. So it's an odd situation.
And picking up Richard Kay's point, why not just stay at Sandringham?
Well, he needs to be invited, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But also Sandringham now, oh dear, you know, it's got terrible memories for him, because that's where they had the Sandringham Summit, you know, where he talks about that at great length in his memoirs, how, you know, that was a fait accompli. It was kind of, he felt that it was, he was told that he had to leave and quit duties and, you know, bring back a lot of bad memories from there. So I'm not sure he'd be rushing back to Norfolk in a hurry.
Amid the royal health crisis, there was some eyebrow-raising news from Montecito when the Duke and Duchess of Sussex revealed a revamp of their website, which was seen by many here as controversial. Here, Natasha Livingston explains why, and Richard Kay and Sarah Vine give their reactions.
It's sussex.com, which is a new invention. It's the kind of relaunching of the Archewell website, which was kind of a front for their business and philanthropic aims. And part of the explanation that was given is that, firstly, their team say that Sussex is their name, so they're just using that. And secondly, Archewell was kind of too favourable to their first child, and using the Sussex name is kind of more unifying for the family. Obviously, it's put quite a few noses out of joint.
Yes, some people are saying
Sussex
it's a betrayal of the Queen.
Yes, well, in their deal when they left as working royals, they said that they would not use their titles, which of course Sussex is, for any kind of business work or financial gain, and this kind of sits in an awkward position with that.
Now, Richard, obviously supporters of the Sussexes have said and might say it's their name, it's still their crest, why shouldn't they use it?
Yeah, I get that, but I also don't quite get why they want to do this. Let's not forget that the Sussexes are the anti-royal royals. They loathe the institution, judging by everything they have said and written about them since they left Britain. And yet they can't seem to sever the bond. This link is irresistible, it seems.
Yeah.
And you know, one doesn't have to be cynical about this, because clearly there are financial benefits from being associated with the monarchy, not being against it.
And you wrote in your column, Sarah, didn't you, that they are beyond redemption and that you'd like to see the King take a more drastic step.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say Sussex is not their name, it's their title. Their name is Mountbatten
Well,
Windsor.
that's why I was confused.
So it's different. The Sussex is a title that was conferred upon them on their marriage by the late Queen. It's not their name. So that is wrong when they say that. And if it is, the only way it could be their name is if they changed it to Sussex by deed poll, which would be an extraordinary thing to do. I think we heard yesterday, didn't we, Natasha, that the children are now apparently called Sussex.
Yeah, it was a report in the Times that that's how the children, they're going about that name instead of Mountbatten Windsor, so that's what they're using.
Right.
Whether or not it's been a legal change, it's not quite clear, but yeah, they're using it.
But I think this is quite dangerous territory for them, because it is a title, and there could be implications, because it's not their name. It's just not their name. Their family name is Mountbatten Windsor.
Now, what do you think the timing is on this, Richard? How long would this have been in the planning? Because I'm sure that there will be cynics who can see that it's landed at a very difficult time when there might be less energy to take it on from the firm.
Yeah, I mean, there are royal focuses on ill health at the moment. Let's face it, we're all concerned about the welfare of the King and the Princess of Wales. The Sussex drama is an endless drama. It carries on. Whether it was cynically done at this stage, I couldn't possibly say, but I mean, many will think that there is something in that. They've obviously been working on it for some time. These things don't come cheap. It's a complete revamp, probably a very expensive one, of their website. They're constantly going through reinvention. I mean, I don't know how many times you and I and Natasha have written about relaunches of the Sussex project. They're constantly doing it. I think one issue that Sarah touched on is interesting about, in her column, she suggested that it's time for the King to take away that title for the Parliament. I think it would have to be a parliamentary act that removed it. But that would elevate, if you like, Meghan to a princess, because she takes her title from her husband. You know, he is a prince. She would then become a princess. And it's interesting that on this new website, they don't use the Duchess title. It's just Prince Harry and Meghan.
Yeah.
It's almost a parenthesis there. Oh yes, we could squeeze princess in there, but we've got no room for Duchess. Duchess sounds a bit old-fashioned. So I think there are dangers in that.
No, I agree. I mean, I completely agree. But let's not forget, this is a couple who trademarked their daughter's name, Lilibet.com. So I think we can see where this is all going.
Then came the reports that Prince Harry wanted to return to royal duties. With Sarah Vine in the hot seat that week, Rebecca and Richard Eden pick up the story here.
There was a story on the front page of the Times newspaper last Saturday, which appeared to me to be very heavily briefed by Harry's side of the equation. Whether it was done with or without his knowledge, we don't know. But effectively saying he would be keen to come back and step into the fray and undertake more royal duties while his father was ill, and obviously Princess of Wales is not well either. It also seemed to suggest that there was a kind of tacit support for the idea here. Now that immediately
from the palace.
Yeah, from the palace. That immediately rung alarm bells with me, because I just know that is not their thinking. And I made some calls and was told very quickly, absolutely not. There has been not even a casual conversation about that here, that we very strongly believe from this side of things that the King, the Prince of Wales, and actually all of the family believe that Sandringham summit, the results of that still remain, where Queen Elizabeth made clear, very, very clear her view, that he could not have a half in and half out role, and if he was going to live in America and pursue commercial opportunities, good luck to him, but that meant he could not be a working member of the royal family.
I mean, it's not as
Nothing's
simple as just
changed.
coming back and doing a couple of shifts. I mean, you can't just plug back into something like the royal family, can you?
No, especially given what's happened over the years. Obviously, no one predicted at that Sandringham summit Harry would go on to do what he subsequently did.
Richard, what was perhaps surprising was that there were quotes from both sides confirming the story.
Yeah, I mean, this was in this Times report that that broke the story, and I think that the dilemma is that the King does, he does want a reconciliation with Harry. That's the thing. So, particularly with his illness, he does welcome that, but you've got all the pressure of the palace and the courtiers, and no one wants that Sandringham agreement to be broken.
No.
So I think it's tricky, but I mean, certainly what I've written in my newsletter this week is that Harry has been given a taste of what to expect when his brother is king, and that's very cold, that he, William will veto any return, any official duties by Harry. That's just not going to happen.
No.
And so I think he's already sort of feeling that chill.
News of Harry's desire to do more royal work here coincided with a new legal case questioning his right to be in America. Richard Eden and Rebecca explain more.
So this is this really interesting case by this think tank, the Heritage Foundation, that wants to know on what basis Harry was allowed to enter the country. And it's all to do with drugs, that most people have to sign on the form to say they have to declare whether they've taken illegal drugs in the past. And this
is it taken or being convicted for?
No, I think they still talk about being a drug abuser.
Right,
actually.
right.
Have you abused
there's
drugs in the past?
there's various declarations that he would have had to make, and they want this to be public. And they think there's an important matter of public interest for the Americans to know, is immigration law being respected and carried out? Because their suspicion is that it hasn't been, that there's been different rules for rich or famous people like Prince Harry than there is for your average person. That's what they're trying to find out.
Indeed. Rebecca, we've also received an unexpected intervention from good old Donald Trump.
He has, and he's made very clear that if he gains another term in office, Harry won't be getting any help from him. I'm not sure Harry would expect any help from him. I think him and Meghan particularly have nailed their colours fairly firmly to the mast on what they feel about Donald Trump.
I just don't really get why. How is that an obvious topic for Donald Trump to talk about?
No, but it was in light of this case, you see, because this is the US government that has gone to court against this think tank to explain, why they don't want to make this public. So what Trump was saying, he was asked about it, was saying, well, he wouldn't get any of those favours if I was president. So that is actually worrying. Trump could potentially make life difficult. I mean, the thing that worries me, frankly, is we don't want him booted out of America, do we? Or he'll have to come back here, or be Harry and Meghan.
He can't afford the security.
Back to Britain, yeah. So, no, just go easy on him, Donald Trump, please.
And this is actually, it's worth pointing out, there's been a lot of ridicule around Spare at the weekend because of this, you know, the best-selling memoir of his, because the argument by the government is, although Harry has detailed a great deal amount of drug abuse over the years in the book, the authorities have said, well, actually, just because someone writes it doesn't mean it's necessarily true.
Oh dear.
But of course, this book has been painted out as the one true story about Harry's life. So, I mean, who
It's
knows
an interesting
what to
defence.
Yeah,
I lied.
Yeah. I mean, this hasn't come from Harry himself, and interestingly, we've not heard a peep from Harry or from Archwell on this case at all. They're obviously watching it play out very quietly. Like you say, it's an interesting defence.
And it is, and I do wonder whether others who feature in the book, such as his brother Prince William, might choose to intervene. You know, is it, you know, he's said that he'd attacked him physically, and we all know about the dog bowl and the broken necklace, that sort of thing. Well, was that true? Or was that something that was exaggerated in the same way as the drug use?
With Catherine still recuperating from surgery, a scandal blew up over a seemingly innocuous Mother's Day portrait of the Princess of Wales and the children released by Kensington Palace, after it was revealed that the picture had been digitally manipulated. Here, Rebecca, Richard and Charlotte Griffiths explain the uproar, with many agreeing with Rebecca's comments to Catherine's Charles to just back off and leave her alone.
I think probably it's best encapsulated by a piece I wrote for the Daily Mail on Wednesday, and I spoke to a lot of, I suppose I would describe them as allies of the princess, people in the household, outside the household, but with very close links, and all of them are of one opinion, as am I have to say, that what happened shouldn't have happened. It was a mistake, but she, you know, within 24 hours, less than 24 hours, had come online and very openly said, look, this was my fault, I'm sorry. And the people I've spoken to think, look, that should be accepted. A line should be drawn underneath it and she should be allowed to move on. It doesn't negate the fact that there was a mistake in the first place. And I think it's worth mentioning, because it was in that piece of mine, that people I've spoken to have said that Catherine is not unaware, although she doesn't have her own social media presence, she's not unaware of a lot of the speculation that we've seen about her health and welfare over recent weeks. And there's been some really vicious, nasty and slanderous stuff out there on social media. She is aware of it and she has found it very, very upsetting. And I think, you know, all of us, I mean, we all get a lot of trolling on social media because of the jobs that we do, and that's not an nth of what she gets. And I think that's a lot of weight on her shoulders, particularly at a time where she's recovering from what clearly is serious surgery. And I think people just need to back off and leave her alone.
Why do we think it just got so crazy?
I mean, I do think it wasn't this whole situation, I do think it hasn't been handled particularly well by Kensington Palace, in as much as there was a little bit of naivety that, you know, one of the world's most famous women could suddenly go out of the public eye for 3 months and people not to speculate about it. And I think, as I said in my piece, often that speculation came from a good place, that people are very fond of her and we just want to know, is everything okay with her?
Yeah.
So I think they should have come out and said something earlier rather than just wait to what they traditionally do on Mother's Day. I know that's their policy, but in this day and age, sometimes you've got to tap dance a little bit more cleverly around that. But I think what we've seen directed at her is just, you know, unbearable for anybody, let alone someone who's just trying to recuperate from really serious surgery.
Obviously, lots of people are saying, come on, it's not a big deal, it's just a devoted mother making a few edits to a family photograph which they've shared with us, which is completely true. But what turned it into a big story was, it's the first time I've ever known that an official photograph from the royal family has been rejected by the world's biggest picture agencies. And, you know, also because it's the first official photograph we've seen of Catherine since Christmas Day, there was huge interest in it, so there's that. But also it taps into this wider issue of trust. All of us in the media at the moment face this issue of how do we deal with AI and the ability for anyone which is being promoted by the mobile phone companies, to change your photos. You can go out now, someone can send us a photo from the street, do some adjusting, and send it to us, and it might not be quite actually what happened. So those agencies, just like other organisations like us, have policies now that we don't use it. But obviously there was a lot of sympathy from all of us towards Catherine over it.
I think it's worth, sorry to interrupt, but pointing out that some people are asking, well, how does this differ from all the kind of heavily edited photographs we see celebrities putting on their Instagram accounts? And it's a valid question. But as you were rightly saying, Richard, and I don't think people probably understand this, is that, yes, the picture was put up on their social media by Kensington Palace to start off with, but then 5 minutes later it was issued by the Palace to these news agencies to distribute in the normal way as a news image. And as you rightly say, they are subject to very strict rules because people are so worried about the use of picture manipulation and AI, to the extent, and I didn't realise this until this week, they're not even allowed to put out a picture of someone that's had just the red eye from the flash rubbed out of it.
Really?
They can't even do that. It has to be a really authentic news moment. I mean, people do maybe adjust the tone of a picture, maybe lighten a few shadows, but that is it. They can't put out an image that, say, a hand appears to have been moved or something like that. They're just not allowed to do that. So they had no choice.
Shows how
really.
good Kate must be as a photographer, because she, until now, because of her illness, has taken all those photos. Has taken a lot of her own photos. And obviously, if you can't edit them, then she's done a really good job. And I think the other problem is that William was taking the picture and maybe didn't do a very good job. And it had to be tweaked,
Meanwhile, the Sussexes found themselves downgraded. Richard's Eden and Kay explain why here.
Yes, this is all a bit unfortunate. It's they're quite slow to do these things, but it's the upgrading of the official royal website. And obviously Prince Harry, as King Charles's younger son, would have a very prominent position, but he dropped down after quitting royal duties. And now it's the next stage of their humiliation. They've been pushed pretty much down to the bottom, just given a joint entry of Duke and Duchess of Sussex. And it depends how you look at it, actually, because on my mobile phone, at least they were still above Prince Andrew. So he was there just below them. But if you look on or certainly on my PC, he was next to Prince Andrew. So they're there right at the bottom, but they're just a sort of embarrassment now, kind of hanging on. But obviously it highlights the very strange position they're in, where, it's the King's younger son is now no longer part of the firm. So is it the royal family, or is it the firm? It's a tricky one.
I just would like real clarification for anyone who doesn't understand. Is this simply about the line of succession, or is it something else, Richard Kay?
Oh, no, it's not to do with the line of succession. I mean, Harry remains very much quite high up in the line of succession. You'll forgive me, I can't remember what number he is.
I think people call him 5 on Twitter.
Number 5. He comes after Prince Louis.
Right.
So they can't take that away from him, but Richard's absolutely right. I mean, he has been downgraded. As we know, the palace never do things in haste, and people have been clamouring for this change for months, if not years.
So what's taken so long?
They don't do things in haste. They take their time. They do it when they think they can slip it out and it won't get noticed. The only trouble is, right now, anything the palace does gets noticed.
Yes.
And these things get interpreted in certain ways. But basically, Richard's right. Harry, no longer a working royal. His wife, not working at all as a working royal. They've slipped right down the list of those prominent royal family members who actually go out and do good deeds on our behalf.
Now, I'm sure that somewhere in the back of their minds in Montecito they were expecting this, but it must sting.
I just think, if you think who's above them, you've got, cousins of Queen Elizabeth, Duke of Gloucester, the Duke of Kent, and they're above the son of the king. So it's a strange situation. But that's what happens when you quit royal duties. Yes, he's still in the line of succession, he's still a Councillor of State, but he's no longer taking part. So the idea is someone who looks at the royal family website would be, who are they? What do they do? They want to find out more information. They don't want to find out about celebrities in California.
In March, social media was buzzing with conspiracy theories over the whereabouts of Catherine. She became the butt of jokes from celebrities, and even President Biden's team was asked about her. All this was stopped by the shocking news that Catherine was being treated for cancer, revealed in an incredibly moving video message. Here Rebecca reveals how the message was delivered, and Richard Eden gives his reaction.
Friday was again, one of those really remarkable and unexpected days in my career covering the royals. I had actually heard a week or so before that what she was experiencing was probably slightly more serious than people realised. Clearly we would never run a story like that because it's her information to impart if she wants to. But I got a message about 3:15 on Friday saying, could you be on a conference call at 4? And I knew it was in connection with the Princess of Wales, so I knew it was going to be pretty serious. And I have to say, you can see obviously people's faces on these group calls, and I've never seen anything like it. People were absolutely devastated for her family. I think there's a lot of people in shock. And what was really emphasised to me on that call, which I think was really interesting, is that you ask about the timing of it. And obviously we've seen all this debate about social media and trolls, which we've spoken about on the programme a lot. And it was absolutely nothing to do with that. This was her decision to do this at a time that she felt was right for her husband, but most importantly, her 3 children. And that is what she has put above everything else throughout the last few months, is how this will affect her children. I think just as a parent of young children, I remember sitting there thinking of little Louis's face, that little 5-year-old.
How do you tell your children those things?
When as a parent, all you want to do is scoop your children up and protect them, and you're having to impart to them something that could really rock their world. And as a parent, no one wants to do that. So you can understand why they have taken the time to do it in a way they want to, despite all the pressure on them. And it was very interesting. Several of us did ask at various points on that call, are you doing this because of this kind of the trolling? And they could have taken that opportunity to lambast the trolls, to lambast the social media commentators, and actually it was very classy. They didn't. It was like, forget all that, forget the noise. This is about us and our family.
Absolutely, don't you? I think that a lot of trolls would have enjoyed feeling like they'd made a manoeuvre there. Do you know what I mean?
They'd forced their hand into doing something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, when we first heard about Kate's surgery, we were told that she would start making appearances after Easter, but presumably that might be extended now. She'll be lying low a few more months.
I think they're going to take it as it comes. It was made very clear to me that she might dip in and out even while undergoing this preventative chemotherapy. So she might, if there was an event she wanted to dip into on maybe a video call, or maybe even appearing in person, she might, but there was no pressure on her whatsoever, and that she would do it as and when she sees fit. But I think we've got to expect that it's very unlikely we will see much of her over what we call the busy summer season, which is the kind of period of time leading up to the end of July when the family go off to Balmoral.
Richard, a distance of a few days, nearly a week actually, since the news broke. What are your thoughts on it now?
I mean, it was very moving to watch. It was very upsetting in many ways, but what came across was Catherine's desire to help others. She made the point that this is not just me, I know what others are going through, people are suffering cancer at the same time, so she made sure that it wasn't just about her. I think they were very keen to broadcast this before Easter, because there's been so much talk about we're looking forward to seeing Catherine on Easter Day, and it started to get whispers of people getting nervous, will she actually be in public or not? So this was her on her own saying, I won't be there, basically, and I need some privacy and I want to have time. And I think this will allow them that pressure has gone, and as a result there have been a lot of people who have apologised or who have felt sorry for things they've said and all the jokes about her disappearance. Well, now we know why.
Well, we'll get into that in a minute, but first, Rebecca, I just want to turn to this message from the Sussexes.
Yeah, so the Duke and Duchess of Sussex put out a message through their spokespeople fairly soon after actually the announcement had been made.
Do you think they would have been given advance warning of this announcement?
100% not.
Wow.
No, 100% not. And I think people will read into that what they will, and probably rightly. You know, it was a warm message of, you know, thoughts and good wishes to her, but I'm not sure they could have said much more than that. Yeah, but it's a suggestion that they would have been told in advance. I mean, we asked that question, obviously, and while the palace weren't commenting on who had been told when, it was pretty clear to us that they wouldn't have been in that inner circle.
Gosh, cold. Richard, you touched on it. You've commented on the reactions of various celebrities and public figures on social media in the run-up to Catherine's video. I think I've seen Kim Kardashian, Blake Lively, among others. One person stands out, a gentleman by the name of Christopher Boozy. Why is that?
God, just the mention of that man's name annoys me. I mean, my goodness.
Sorry, it's here on the cards. I have to.
Yeah, he's been engaging with me on social media as well.
Really?
And this is, he is actually, in terms of the lives of Harry and Meghan, he is actually quite an important figure. And I say that because you might remember their 3-part dire Netflix series that we all had to watch.
I do remember it.
He featured heavily. He's a tech boss, American tech boss. I think he became involved with Harry and Meghan because he was interested. I think he'd made some positive comment about them and then was really interested in the sort of negative response he received. And he started to analyse the response, and he was convinced that there was a lot of sort of organised trolling of them. And as a result, he's become quite involved with Harry and Meghan, certainly a big supporter. But anyway, over recent weeks, he's been one of the most prominent proponents of conspiracy theories. You know, and even after Catherine's video, I mean, there she was, you know, filmed in the garden, it's filmed by this BBC crew, you know, and then he's still questioning and everything, and then talking about how the images we'd seen of them visiting a farm shop couldn't have been correct because she looked much healthier in this video, and all
My
this
question
sort of stuff.
is, who's got time to spend analysing that kind of stuff?
Well, in a way, it's sort of his job because he's this tech boss. He's got this firm that kind of analyses all this stuff, but he's been really pushing it. And lots of the stuff he's said and in the past is unpleasant. You know, it's personal. And then I think often he claims racism because he's black, and he's often says, "Oh, you're out to get me because I'm black," or whatever. You just think, shut up, you're just a very annoying man.
I think he revels slightly in the notoriety as a lot of the people have around this. But I think what was amazing is about Catherine's video message was how dignified and how classy it was. And I think that they don't really need to say anything because it's such a direct counterbalance to the kind of rabid you know, musings on social media of these kind of conspiracy, you know, spreaders. So I think actually they've come up with the most dignified and appropriate response they could.
It just feels like there's no response that would be satisfactory.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, Joe, absolutely.
Well, I think Harry and Meghan's sort of loathing of mainstream media as such has led them, you know, into bed with figures like Boozy, and that's worrying, you know, to have someone like him featured so heavily in your own series. I think is disturbing.
Crackers. Now, in your newsletter this week, you say that this could be a time for a reset in relations, but from everything you two have just said, I'm not feeling optimistic.
Well, since Catherine's video was broadcast almost a week ago, there have been lots of suggestions that William, with his wife being treated for cancer, should mend fences with his brother, that it's a great time for them to, you know, come back together and this sort of thing. But what I've said in my newsletter is that it's up to Harry and Meghan to seek forgiveness. You know, we're in this season of Lent, and they should be the ones who apologise for all the hurt they've caused. And I know our lawyers and people wouldn't want me to suggest that they've contributed to the King's or Catherine's illnesses, but certainly what they have contributed to is a terrible state of mental health. That, you know, what has Catherine been having to put up with in silence over the past few years, with just this constant barrage of attacks? Any of us would find that gruelling and hard to take. So they should apologise publicly, privately, and then maybe things can start to heal.
We'll see. Well, if there can be some positive news out of a story like Catherine's diagnosis, we're here to hear about it. And now some news outlets, Richard, are talking about the quote-unquote the Kate effect. What is that?
Well, just all the talk of cancer and has sort of led people to question things themselves. One of the leading cancer charities, Macmillan, saw a big rise, I think it was about 10%, in people searching for information about different types of cancer, this sort of thing. So I think, again, you know, Catherine has helped normalise it, just like they've done with mental health. They've seen that, you know, it's not that scary word, you know, that big C that no one can mention. And if she's helped to sort of normalise that a bit and make people more willing, particularly us men perhaps, to discuss these things, then she's done a good turn.
Indeed. Now, Rebecca, the other thing that this sad news has shown us is that the bond between the King and the Princess of Wales is closer than ever.
It is. I mean, they've always had a very good relationship because they've bonded over kind of art and the music. And I think I've written about in the past how they would often go for secret trips together to the Royal Opera House that no one ever knew about. But obviously now they have, I mean, it's sad because obviously no one wants to share a bond like cancer, but they do. And we've had reports which have been confirmed is that the day after she filmed her video message, the King invited her for lunch with him at Windsor Castle. So they've got something to talk about. And I know he really admires her for the, I think, solidity she's brought to his son's life. He thinks she's a brilliant mother and is bringing up his grandchildren fantastically. So he's already got a lot of admiration for her, but I know he's also had a lot of admiration for the way she's conducted herself throughout this, you know, admittedly with a lot of people poking her with a stick. And also equally, I think she, from what I hear, was quite inspired by his openness about his own diagnosis and the treatment that he was going through as well.
Well, some people, Richard, have said that actually that has helped pave the way for Catherine and to give her the confidence to go public.
Yes, I think from all we hear, King Charles was interested and perhaps a bit worried about the reaction to his talking about cancer. We've discussed in the past how monarchs would never want to indicate that, you know, they've had cancer. It is a first. And he was very heartened by the reaction, that it was sympathetic and positive. It encouraged talk among people and people willing to discuss cancer. And so that's encouraged Catherine to do the same. So it's definitely a positive thing.
Speaking of Catherine, here are some of our favourite pictures of the now Princess of Wales. Meanwhile, in Montecito, Harry appeared to have finally made the move permanent to America after 4 years. The news came as we heard updates on the couple's Netflix projects and Meghan Markle revealed her new jam. We'll have Rebecca's reaction to that, and Charlotte Griffiths tells us the moment she believes that Meghan's mask slipped.
It relates to the company we were talking about a moment ago, Travelist, and Prince Harry has updated his details with Companies House in Britain, because you have to give your home, your place of residence. And he has finally said that he is now resident in the USA. It's taken him 4 years since they quit Britain. He always said, you know, Britain will always be my home, and it's clearly not now. And, you know, there are all sorts of implications from this. Remember, we've got that case that we've discussed on this programme quite a lot about Harry's immigration status, what he wrote on his forms. It's the subject of a case at the moment with the Heritage Foundation, a think tank that wants to know what did he write. They want to be able to show, what did he say about that past drug use. And then there's other questions about his future roles as well.
Is it... residency doesn't really have any bearing on citizenship, right?
No.
No, so, yeah.
But I think what's really interesting is that date he gave was backdated to the day that King Charles threw him out of Frogmore.
This is really pointed. So when he actually said about since when have you been resident in the USA, he made the point that it was that day that my father evicted me from my lovely home in Windsor.
Oh, not that he's keeping score at all.
No.
At all. Now, Rebecca, we also have an update, don't we, about the Netflix projects of the Sussexes. What can you tell us?
Yeah, this made me smile. So it suddenly found itself in the way to some very sympathetic publications that Harry and Meghan were working on 2 big new projects for Netflix. One was a project being curated by Meghan, which I think is quite an interesting choice of words. Doesn't suggest she features in it or hosts it, but that's about lifestyle, cooking, friendship, all that sort of thing. And the other is a programme about polo and the kind of fast-paced polo world behind the scenes. Then miraculously, a couple of days later, we first of all, I'm sure we'll get on to discuss this, pots of jam associated with Meghan's new business venture start popping up on social media after she sent them to friends and influencers, and they turn up at the Centre Barley fundraising polo match in Florida with a Netflix crew in tow. It's almost as if it was planned.
No.
Strategy comms.
Yeah, amazing. Now, Richard, what do you think about these Netflix shows? Will they be setting the world on fire, the box office alight?
I think it's fascinating. I mean, remember, there's been rumours for ages that Prince Harry's next project for Netflix would be about Africa. He loves Africa. It's been central to his life. And the idea that's been mooted was for him to return there and make a documentary. Well, that hasn't happened, and it makes you wonder. I can imagine him at the meeting, saying, I want to make a show about Africa, and them saying, wouldn't that be very expensive? Would it be great to have a privileged white man going to Africa to give this documentary? So any of that hasn't happened. So what has he been left with? A programme about the poshest sport that there is.
The most privileged white man sport there is.
Is polo. I mean, my goodness, both these projects, we've heard all these rumours about their deal with Netflix is going to come to an end shortly, at the end of this year probably. To me, this bears it out in a way, because both projects are very cheap. Netflix has got massive budgets, but instead it's just a cookery programme, filmed at a house in Montecito, and polo, which kind of he does anyway, take along a camera crew.
They've blown their budget on the deal, that £100 million deal with Meghan and Harry.
I mean, what is much more interesting, though, is Meghan's programme, actually, much more interesting, because from everything I hear, they see it as a chance to recoup some of the money for Netflix, because there are going to be commercial spin-offs from it.
We'll talk about that in a second, but I just want to stay on this polo match for the moment, because Charlotte, there was some controversy, wasn't there, over Harry and Meghan on the polo field that's got a lot of people talking.
Yeah, so Meghan's mask slipped, for sure, and we saw her true colours, I'd say, and I've watched this clip 100 times, because Harry's standing there with his trophy, and a woman comes up and tries to stand next to him. Normal thing, there's lots of people lined up, and Meghan just basically sort of verbally yanks her away from him and places this woman next to her, so she's not next to Harry. And she sort of points several times in this video, and you can see it online. There's a clip of it. And she says, "Would you like to stand over here? Would you like to stand over here?" over and over again. And it just shows how choreographed all of this is. And of course, the Netflix cameras were rolling. But Meghan, I think in her mind, clearly, she's got a very photographic mind, I'm guessing. She was imagining the photos, and she wanted to be the woman next to Harry, clearly. And I just think it just shows these things are very choreographed. And it's not the first time at a polo match that her mask has slipped either, because it happened in 2022 as well. She kept trying to edge her way to the front, holding her hat to the front of the same scene, the polo lineup. And she couldn't quite make her way with her hat underneath all their arms, and it was just it was choreography nightmare. And it goes to show she's desperate to be front and centre of these things.
And I have to say that this woman who was wanting to stand next to Harry. This wasn't just some beautiful model that's there for a pretty picture. This was actually Dr. Sophie Chanduka, who is the boss of Prince Harry's charity, Centre Barlow.
She has every right to stand next to him then.
So, my goodness, that sort of dismissive tone with her is really cringe-making.
Yes, because she's very bossy. She really points and says, sort of get out of the way, as if she's a lackey.
Dr. Chanduka is a very distinguished character, so it's going to be interesting to see how long she remains in that job.
Well, and it was things that were a little bit more precisely planned was the jam presentation. Well, tell us, who got the jam? This is what I want to know.
Well, exactly, because I suppose, look, I'm not an influencer.
Oh, so you didn't get any jam?
Funny enough, no, but as I think I said before, I do have some of my mum's pickled onions, if anyone would like to share them after the show. They're very good, they're very strong. We have to say, we've got terrible problems with the post in Britain, so I'm sure that those hampers of jam are on their way to us as we speak.
Yes, and it's a preserve, so it will keep, don't panic.
But it actually genuinely intrigues me how this works, because suddenly these pictures started popping up. I think we had 2 on one day, we've now had a third, to a lady who turns out to be the wife of the boss of Paramount. You've got one of Meghan's friends, I think now Mindy Kaling, I don't know if you pronounce her, who's quite a big figure in US entertainment, has appeared on Meghan's podcast. Suddenly, all very similarly posed pictures of this artfully arranged pot of jam in a basket of lemons, slightly inexplicably.
With the lid still on.
Yeah, and saying, oh, I love your jam, it's amazing, when clearly it hasn't even been opened. Yeah. That stuff just doesn't
maybe they've had it
to
for
me.
breakfast before, when she's been making it around,
And all of them is numbered 1 to 50, so there must be a guessing game. So who got number 1? Who was number 50? Like, is this a pecking order of how important you are in terms of
I'd be offended if I got number 50 out of 50.
I have to say that King Charles might have the last laugh, though, because sources at his Highgrove shop in Gloucestershire tell me there's been a real run on his Highgrove strawberry conserve. So what's happened is these sort of loyal royalists, all this talk about Meghan's jam, well, they want to go and buy a pot of the King's Good
and also,
conserve.
Is it mean of me to slightly observe that, Meghan's giving her food to rich influencers and William's out there today giving food to the needy?
Well, there is a point, and he did bring some stuff from his own kitchen to give to them. And of course, Highgrove jam and also Duchy Originals products. All of the Highgrove money from Highgrove produce goes to charity, and the Duchy Original range, which Charles set up many years ago, all of it originally went to charity. Then they did a deal with Waitrose, which profits of it, but a significant proportion of the profits still go to the King's charities. So they're very, very different setups. So because I'm presuming, we haven't been told yet, but I'm presuming not a great portion of the jam money will go to.
We don't know how much this jam costs yet, but Meghan will charge $200 a pop because she thinks so well of herself.
But we must admit, it's been a great publicity stunt.
There were some unwelcome headlines for Meghan Markle following an interview with a former senior palace courtier. Natasha Livingston and Richard Kay explain, while Richard Eden explains his story about Meghan's podcast plans hitting another snag.
Samantha Cohen worked for the Queen, I think for around 17 years, so she was incredibly well experienced, and then went on to work for the Sussexes, and then left after, I think it was about 2 years, so she didn't stay with them for that long and did the job, I think, on the request really of the Queen. She's not spoken publicly about this time. Obviously loyal royal aides are normally very tight-lipped about these sort of things, but she is Australian and was interviewed by the Herald Sun in Australia, and they were asking her about the allegations of bullying against Meghan Markle, which I'm sure viewers will be aware of. It created a lot of headlines here, even though Meghan Markle and her lawyers have always steadfastly denied it. And she revealed that she was interviewed by palace officials about these allegations, and she didn't go further than that to comment on the allegations or give any more detail, but it's quite significant because we know a number of staff were interviewed, but not who. So now it's the question, will this perhaps embolden other members of staff to step forward and talk about it? But yeah, it's quite an interesting thing that she's revealed.
It is interesting. Now, as Natasha says, we should stress that lawyers for Meghan have denied all of these bullying claims. But Richard Kay, the point about that Tom Bower made, that echoing again Natasha, that he feels that it will embolden more people to come forward. Do you think that's true?
It might, but I suspect a lot of the people who were interviewed for the course of that inquiry had already signed NDA, non-disclosure agreements, which would put them in deep trouble if they were to open their mouths. Also, as Natasha pointed out, Samantha was a very senior courtier, worked at the highest levels at Buckingham Palace, whereas we know for a fact that many of the people interviewed for the inquiry are much more junior staff and may not feel as emboldened to come forward. But look, anything is possible. And if there is a sort of a crack in this, and the fact that this report has been buried and not been made public has annoyed and upset a lot of people who feel it should be. So maybe that may well happen.
Yes, indeed, Richard Eden. It does, to many people, feel like it raises more questions than answers them, doesn't it, this whole episode?
It's a very unsatisfactory situation all round. I mean, remember why this investigation was launched. It was after the former aide, Jason Knauf, went public, and those, well, they were leaked, his complaints, and it was reported in the Times newspaper. Then this investigation was launched. And, saying you're going to launch an investigation, but they're not giving any of the results. It's, not only is it unsatisfactory for people who claim they're being mistreated or bullied, but also for Meghan, because, these accusations are left hanging there. But, I mean, what surprises me is, why is Meghan not calling for the results to be made public? As you say, she's always insisted that she's got, nothing, she did nothing wrong. Well, she should put pressure herself on Buckingham Palace to release the results of this investigation.
Interesting take. So watch this space. Now, sticking with the Sussexes, to a story you've written about Meghan's new podcast plans. What's the scoop there?
You might remember that after they quit royal duties, they rushed into these various lucrative deals, and one of them was with the audio giant Spotify for many millions of dollars. They didn't produce much content. I think it was about 12 episodes of Meghan's podcast. When we first heard about this deal, it was with Harry. He appeared on one, and we thought, it could be quite fun. But then poor old Harry, he got banished. It was all Meghan, and it was a whole series. And as you know, I had to listen to each one as part of my work for this programme.
What do you mean had to? It was a treat. You got to listen to them.
It was a weekly honour.
You got paid to listen.
Yes. So anyway, but then that deal came to an end. Rather acrimoniously, you'd have to say, because one of the Spotify executives, Bill Simmons, made some very unflattering comments about using the word grifters.
I'd still fantasise about getting drunk with that guy, hearing a little bit more.
Yeah, he did tease that he would say so much more if he had a night out with a few drinks. So that's still to come. But anyway, after that, clearly Meghan was keen for some positive publicity. A few months later, early this year, she announced that she'd signed a new deal to re-release those old podcasts and also make a new series for a very small company that none of us had heard of, Lemonada Media. Anyway, so my story this week is apparently there will be no podcast this year. So we're in a situation where...
Well, it's nearly May. Why bother?
Exactly. Yeah. So, up to a year after announcing the deal, we'll have to wait before we hear anything. And now, come on, this is a very strange way of operating. I mean, take Netflix. They will announce, a new film or something when it's about to... it's gone into production or it's about to be broadcast a few weeks ahead. It's very strange to announce deals and then have nothing. Announcing a deal like this and then not producing any content, any podcasts for a year, it does make me a bit suspicious about Meghan's motives. You do wonder, is she just doing it for the publicity? Hopefully, eventually, she will produce something and I'll be shown to be wrong, but until then, it does make me suspicious.
Harry and Meghan announced a big trip to Nigeria, ostensibly to promote the Invictus Games. Richard Eden and Rebecca English explain why this visit wasn't without controversy.
I've made the point in my newsletter, an article for Mail Plus this week, that Invictus Games is a great project. I think everyone agrees it's done a lot for injured former servicemen and women and help them to compete and turn their lives around. So it's been great. They just made the point that we shouldn't overlook that there is a scandal in Africa connected with one of his charities. It's a very key charity for Harry. He's very senior in it. He's still a trustee. It's African Parks. And what it is, there's been a scandal which has been exposed by the Mail on Sunday and other outlets as well, where rangers who work for this conservation charity have been involved in terrible things, torture, rape, abuse, this type of thing. And essentially what this conservation charity does is they buy up vast areas of Africa in order to conserve the wildlife within them. So that's great. But within these vast areas, there are African people, tribal people, in this case the controversy surrounds the Baka people, who have hunted on this land for centuries, since time immemorial. And then suddenly these people are being beaten or attacked by these rangers who are now in charge of this area. So it's a really interesting subject that touches on, I would say, sometimes sort of colonialist views of Africa that we come in and take over.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Harry has not really said much on this other than that he's spoken to the chair of the charity.
Well, a charity that's concerned with tribespeople survival contacted him with these allegations last year, and what Harry has said that at that time he passed on the claims immediately to the appropriate people at the charity, that was the chairman, the president, I think, and we didn't hear much more. So it wasn't until the Mail on Sunday picked up on it in January that it became a bigger issue. But I think it's important to address, and certainly next week we're going to see a very regal type tour of Nigeria. I think it's going to be great for their brand as a sort of alternative royal family.
Well, indeed, that seems like the deliberate move sometimes, doesn't it?
I think, in my opinion, it does. I think they want to burnish this idea of being an alternative royal family, and what better way than a royal tour? And I think also you'll see a lot of their allies stressing how next week's trip will be different from trips by the royal family, such as the Prince and Princess of Wales to the West Indies, when they were criticised for some of the imagery. And I think definitely Harry and Meghan want to give a different image, that they're there for Africa, which is a continent that's very close to Harry's heart.
I would add to that, actually, that a lot of the people I speak to who obviously know Harry and Meghan of old, there's a lot of wry smiles on their faces this week, because of this idea of they're going on this big trip. There's going to be some cultural events, there's going to be Invictus events, and the wry smile that all they did was say the way the royals did things are not the right way to do things, and yet they're kind of mimicking that in their own trip. I think there's a little schadenfreude there.
Before his trip to Africa with Meghan, Prince Harry flew into the UK, but there was no chance this time for a meeting with his father. Richard Eden and Charlotte Griffiths pick up the story.
Well, it did come as a surprise to some, because last weekend there were lots of reports, front page reports, that Harry was going to meet his father.
Except on the Mail, we will.
Exactly,
yes.
Certainly not in the Daily Mail.
Yeah.
And then, so it became slightly embarrassing when Harry's spokesman put out the statement saying that, his father couldn't find time, and there was a bit of an edge to that statement.
Is that a weird thing to do, to make an official announcement in that way?
Well, they said they were just addressing, because they've had so many questions about it. They were addressing that directly. Otherwise, they may have felt that it would overshadow the trip completely. But it is very striking indeed.
Charlotte, we know the King's very busy. We've been discussing it not 10 minutes ago, and they're not a typical family. But in a rare week when they're in the same country, 2 miles apart, it speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It does speak volumes. The fact that he had 8,000 people at the Buckingham Palace garden party and there wasn't room for one more is really sad. Actually, this is the first time I've been truly, truly saddened by that dispute between them, because, of course, any king can make 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour for his son. He's the King of England. He calls the shots on every level. But the time just wasn't available. And also, William was around the corner in Windsor doing an investiture. there was no time for his brother. I mean, that's slightly more predictable. But just to think of them all in the same sort of region of, West London, more or less, and they didn't see each other. It's really, really sad, actually, I think.
Now, Richard, we talked earlier about the unexpected positive consequences of Charles's cancer diagnosis, while your fellow Royal Richard Kay, wrote this week that the King's illness has, if anything, added to the estrangement between Charles and Harry. Why do you think he would say that?
No, it's an interesting point that some have made, and I've written about it in my newsletter this week. And I think it's the fact now that the King just doesn't want distractions. He's become even more focused on getting his work done.
His son's a distraction.
Yeah, I mean, people I spoke to this week said
awkward.
He just brings unhappiness, he brings drama. I mean, remember the conversations we've had in this programme before where we were talking about the King's birthday, and that became a whole drama that they were, from California we were getting statements about Harry was going to be speaking to his father on the phone, and then we heard all the contents of that conversation that Meghan had joined in and this sort of thing after. So the King knows that everything he says basically will leak out one way or another. And, for someone who is just determined to get on with the job, that's very problematic.
Yeah.
I have this theory too, back to the point about Nigeria, that if Charles was to meet Harry, say yesterday, and then the very next day he flew to Nigeria, that's quite a close association, and it's almost like giving the royal seal of approval to that Nigeria trip, I think.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
And there's no way Charles wants to have anything to do with Nigeria, because he has no idea what Meghan and Harry are going to say, how they're going to act. The royal family do not approve that message, whatever it is. And if he saw Harry, it's just too close an association, I think.
And also, while this was all unfurling, Charlotte, the palace announced a big engagement between the King and William. What is it, and what do you make of the timing of that?
Yeah, so they're going to do a joint engagement on Tuesday next week, because William's being made Colonel of the Army Air Corps. And I just thought the timing of the announcement, yeah, sure, they had to announce it this week, that's true. But the fact they announced it at 9 p.m, just at the height of all the speculation about whether Harry and Charles were going to see each other, and we just found out that they weren't. And it was, building and building, and then they just cut it all back and just said, by the way, Charles and William are going to do an engagement next week. William's going to be the head of this very important part of the army, and it really stopped everyone dead in their tracks and thought, oh gosh, this is actually war here, because this is the first time the royal family really pushed back quite hard on Harry in a public way as best they can, because they can't give out statements like Harry did saying my dad doesn't have time for me. They couldn't do that, but they did do this, and it was a serious gesture, I think, and it was very pointed and definitely deliberate, that timing.
I mean, let's be clear. I mean, that appointment of Colonel-in-Chief, which the King has handed over to Prince William of the Army Air Corps, will really hurt Prince Harry. It will be very painful, because Harry served with the Army Air Corps himself when he was in Afghanistan. He was the helicopter pilot. And it is a role that, had he stuck with the royal family, quite possibly would have been handed to him. So to have that announced, and particularly at the time when Harry's coming here, does seem very pointed and will be very painful.
A kick in the teeth, I'd say.
It really is as dramatic as all those old sort of like Dallas-style soap operas sometimes, isn't it? Where do Charles and Harry go from here? Is this at all reparable?
Well, the key point that I made in my newsletter is it's about essentially apologising. That there can't be any kind of reconciliation until Harry and Meghan apologise for all the hurt they've caused and everything they've done. And there's no sign of that. Quite the opposite. In private, they're saying that they're still owed an apology. So until that's overcome, how can you have any kind of rapprochement?
I think Harry's got one card to play. I'm just going to put this out there. If Harry came over with the children, there's no way that Charles could refuse a meeting, because it would just look terrible. And also, I think he genuinely really wants to meet his grandchildren. I think they've only seen each other once or twice in their lives. So that's what, if Harry really wants to see his dad, I suggest he brings his children over.
But from what we hear, Meghan is sort of refusing to come to Britain on the basis that there's a security problem. This is that Harry took the British government to court, that security wasn't provided, and lost that case. And so it's unsafe to bring them. That's the sort of theory. So
there's no way that if he brought the kids to Buckingham Palace, though, I mean, those are going to be the most secure children on the planet, you know, and the King's not going to let his grandchildren come to harm's way. I wouldn't be surprised if some special measures were put in to encourage that notion.
No, I mean, it's ridiculous. And Meghan is currently flying to Nigeria, which is a dangerous country in comparison with Britain.
Interesting stuff. It really is. Now, a lot of Palace viewers might not know that our Charlotte is very well acquainted with Harry's old chums, the old friend group. Any whispers in there of him seeing anybody?
No, he saw Mark Dyer, who is probably his last remaining close friend in London, I'd say, of the old school variety. And Mark Dyer is his sort of second father, godfather / best friend / advisor. I mean, in lieu of Charles, I'd say he's got Mark Dyer. He's a kind of fatherly figure. And then that's pretty much it, because the Van Strapanzis he was very close with. But this week, Tom Van Strapanzi has been in communication with William, who's sort of more his best friend.
That was my next question, because surely the brothers have a lot of friends in common, so that makes that very awkward for that friend group, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it's beyond awkward. I mean, most of them have actually been cut off, and they've actually ended up choosing William. The Van Strapanzis is a really good example, because William's giving Tom Van Strapanzi's mum, Claire Van Strapanzi, an MBE, and you know, that sort of put the Van Strapanzis in William's camp. And I'd say probably one of the last remaining joint friends they had was Tom Van Strapanzi. But anyway, they're over on Team William now. And then there's Mark Dyer. There's no one else. Nicky Scott from the Netflix documentary, he wasn't at the St Paul's Cathedral service. So it's really sad. And there's no Princess Eugenie. He was really good friends with Princess Eugenie. She wasn't there. That whole circle's just been cut off, really.
Well, in any case, well done for saying Van Strapanzi so many times so correctly. That was really well done.
Or just Van for short, in the future.
No, I like it. It sounds great. Richard, you also reported that Harry's had a legal setback in the US this week.
Yes, this is connected to a different charity, very good charity, Centre Barley, that Harry co-founded to help. It was African children orphaned because of the AIDS crisis. So it's a very good charity, but he's been trying to trademark various names in the USA, and they've all been rejected. All the applications have been rejected in quite a scathing kind of way by the authorities in the USA, that just, you know, not adequate, you haven't given enough information. It would seem very kind of shoddy work. And also, unfortunately, it seems like the American branch of the charity hasn't been doing so well. Their donations to Centre Barley have halved over the past year. And given that Harry and Meghan are based in California, it's really striking. You would have thought that the fact they're there with all these rich friends and everything, they should boost donations, but that hasn't happened. So hopefully maybe that will in the future, because it is a charity that does a lot of good work.
In happier news now, royal garden parties returned to Buckingham Palace. The news coincided with a controversial new portrait of King Charles. Here is Rebecca English and the two Richards, Kay and Eden.
Last week I was at the first one of the season, and it was working as always. I keep on telling them we don't even get to eat or drink. We're just racing around after people
here's
with
my
our
tiny
nose
violin.
books. I know.
Yeah.
But what was lovely about it was the King was back, and I had an exclusive actually the weekend before, just saying that he was going to be attending his first garden party of the year. Now the doctors have given him the go-ahead to do so. And actually what was lovely was he was so enthusiastic about it. I mean, you know, he's clearly a man that's undergoing treatment. He doesn't look as well as he did, say, 18 months ago, but he was in just a really jolly mood and was, you know, glad-handing as many people as he could. And I was warned in advance that they might try to tweak it a little bit, you know, that he might do 45 minutes instead of an hour of meeting the public. He might shake less hands. But of course he listened to none of that and wanted to meet and greet as many people as possible.
I did seem to be enjoying meeting the very glamorous women there, I must say.
Well, wouldn't you? I mean, it's a great opportunity to get out your hats and your posh frocks. And
there was all the models like Rosie Huntington-Whiteley and Maya
that
Jama.
was the one this week. They did
that was yesterday. they?
Yeah, they did a special garden party for the entertainment and arts industry. And there was a great moment with Maya Jama when she said, you know, I host this programme called Love Island. I'm not sure you will have seen it. And he was like, well, there's one porn every minute. You know, he was being quite skittish.
I didn't actually understand that. What did he mean by that?
I think it's to do with kind of love, and she was talking about snogging and things like that. So.
Blimey, he's talking about snogging with the king.
Yeah,
Mind boggles.
I can't keep track of that conversation at all. Richard Kay, back to some sense. You've been to plenty of these in your time, and now, other than being a royal correspondent like yourself and Rebecca, how does one get invited? Tell a needy, desperate Australian.
It's quite hard. You can't turn up and get one from a scalper from a ticket tout outside. You have to be invited. You can't apply for a ticket. Usually guests are chosen randomly from all walks of life.
Randomly?
Randomly, yes. By local government, by national government, the Lord Lieutenants of all our esteemed shire counties have a hand in who gets invited. People's names are put forward and then they get a list and they try to get am I right, Rebecca, sort of a representation, a cross-section of people from society, old and young, you know, new and old, whatever. And
I like the idea of, like, maybe one day my name will be randomly put into this big tombola and it'll come out and I'll finally get to go.
It could be something like that. And they are a very entertaining opportunity for people watching.
And do they have any issues with people trying to snaffle little souvenirs?
Well, they did one year, because I was actually there that year, and it hailed, the heavens open. I've never seen hail like golf balls. And these tents aren't that big, so people were trying to shelter under them. So the minute the diplomatic / royal tea tent exited, which is basically when the royal family leave and people can still stay there for another hour, they let people go in there. But then everyone started nicking the crockery, the knives, the forks, the spoons, the cups, everything. So then the next year we did the Royal Family Houses, they made a point of saying their spending was up on crockery because of the amount of stuff that people had nicked.
You can't trust anyone these
Unbelievable.
days. Yeah.
Now, Richard Eden, with your social diary hat on, it's quite a badge of honour, isn't it, to be invited to the Royal Garden Party?
No, definitely. I mean, there's one thing I love about being in central London at this time of year is you see all the guests dressed up, the men in their morning suits, the women in their best hats and dresses, and it really adds a lot of colour. But yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of social status to getting one of these invitations. It's something to be proud of. I mean, remember, a lot of people do. It's about 8,000 per party, I think. So
30,000.
That makes me feel even more left out.
I mean, can you imagine organising that? But it's an honour to go, and I've noticed more and more people taking selfies as well this year.
Indeed. Yes, I thought that wasn't allowed.
I think the rules have changed. It's like generally with phones, because they've been used so much, you can't be telling people off, and I think they want to make sure people feel relaxed, and that's part of it these days.
Maybe one day, guys. Maybe one day. Well, we do have some fantastic pictures of royal garden parties from over the years coming up a little bit later in the show, so stick around for that. Before all of that, though, Rebecca, you were back at Buckingham Palace as King Charles unveiled his first portrait as monarch. What can you tell us about it?
Yes, it was on Tuesday, so it was at Windsor in the morning and then kind of hot-footed it to BP in the afternoon. And you walked into the blue drawing room and there was this, it was done up like a Christmas present with this huge bow on it and this kind of black tarpaulin about it. It's huge, this portrait. And I have to say, he had seen it when it was 2/3 completed, so it wasn't an entire surprise for him. But of course, when the tarpaulin came off, there was a kind of audible gasp because it was a vision of redness, like we'd never expected. And I have to say, there's been a lot of commentary about this picture, and I'm sure we'll come on to it.
'Twas ever thus with royal portraits.
Jonathan Yeo, hopefully I've pronounced that right, who is one of the most celebrated contemporary portrait artists, did it. And there was a lot of kind of inspiration and meaning behind it. Monarch butterflies hovering over the king's shoulder to kind of emphasise his metamorphosis from prince to king during the process of the painting, as well as his love of the environment. But it's really striking when you see it in the flesh. I think flat on a page, it doesn't come across so well, but in the flesh there's almost like kind of a luminousness to it, like this 3D quality. But it was quite funny because when the king, this tarpaulin was so big, he kind of struggled to get it off, and as he got it off he kind of muttered under his breath, "Christ!" And I was standing there thinking, I really hope people don't think that's commentary on the painting. It really was struggling to try and unveil it.
There's our king. I mean, I'm reminded Richard Cave, there was, do you remember Pengate, when he with the temper tantrum over the pen?
Stinking pen.
He hasn't sat for the amount of portraits that his late mother did. How patient is somebody like Charles to actually go through that process?
Well, he isn't. That's the point. And he'd much rather be painting than being painted, and he hasn't devoted nearly as much time as his late mother did to royal portraiture. I think he's going to have to. I think that actually this is the second portrait. One was unveiled last year, which was done without a sitting, although the artist was invited to go to some royal events and took sketches. But this is the first long-term formal sitting he sat for. Will there be more? I'm sure there will. I mean, I think he didn't particularly like some of the paintings that were done of him as Prince of Wales, and so he's quite choosy now about who gets the commission.
And actually, so we should say, although Queen Elizabeth was painted many times, I mean, she wasn't always enamoured of the paintings that were given to her. I remember when we were in Germany in 2015 and the President of Germany unveiled this painting of her as a child on a horse being led by her father. I remember standing there and it was quite clear by her face she thought this thing was hideous.
I need to Google this painting immediately.
She got to the stage in her life, I think she was less bothered about trying to hide it. And she was like, yeah, that's an interesting colour for that horse. And then they said, well, that's your father, King George the VI, leading you on that horse. Did you recognise him? And she looked at it and went, no.
Things were less happy over in Montecito as the Sussexes suffered another embarrassing charity setback. Here the same panel looked at that story and analysed the pair's trip to Nigeria.
It suddenly emerged that a document had been issued from the Department of Justice in the state of California, which is a bit, I think they deal with charity registrations much like we have the Charity Commission in the UK. And it said that it described their Archewell Foundation as delinquent because it had failed, it said, to either issue its annual report or to pay the fees associated with it. Now this caused a bit of a fluster in Camp Sussex because they were all either en route or travelling in Nigeria for their trip there. And they said they were going to look into it. Their first explanation was that we had sent a cheque off, but it seems to have got lost in the post.
Oh, that old one.
Yeah.
The dog ate my homework.
Yeah. Then the next day they said, no, we can, and actually to be fair, the Department of Justice did confirm this, it was received but it hadn't been processed. Uh-huh. The insinuation from the Sussexes was, well, you see, it's not our fault, they hadn't done it on their end. Things are now okay, and they've now been declared as a perfectly legitimate operating charitable foundation again. But obviously it's an incredibly embarrassing incident. I mean, that kind of thing really shouldn't happen with an organisation as high profile that wants to be even higher profile as theirs.
Yeah, I mean, Richard Kay, obviously charities run by the working royals. There's been ups and downs, there's been controversies, but this is kind of a new one, isn't it?
I've never heard of this before, a cheque being lost in the post. And do people still send cheques for?
Well, that's the other thing.
I mean, maybe they do in the US. No, it's highly unusual. Normally, as Rebecca says, royal-run charities are scrupulous in getting stuff in on time. We never hear stories about them being late in filing accounts. So this is a big lapse on Team Sussex's part.
And Richard Eden, particularly unwelcome timing, as this was announced during their big PR push in Nigeria.
I think the most unfortunate thing is the use of that word delinquent.
Well, it means something different with companies, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not a word used here in Britain for that meaning, but clearly it is in America, and it's such a great word, it conjures up all sorts of bad images. But yeah, I think we've seen this quite a bit actually, where it's a reflection that they're not very well organised. I think there's a danger when you come from a system in the royal family where everything is done for you and organised very smoothly. When you've suddenly got to organise everything yourself, you know, Archwell the charity, Archwell the companies, there's a lot of admin and bureaucracy.
But they must have senior staff in place there. They can't be at the coalface of that.
They do,
sort of
but
end,
we have seen quite a turnover of staff as well. So clearly someone needs to get a grip there, but maybe, you know, they need to appoint their new CEO or whatever.
There were more stories about the King not meeting Harry, but yet finding time to meet David Beckham. Here the panel pick up the story.
Did Harry want to see his father? I'm sure he did. Did Charles want to see his son? I'm sure he did. But it was convenient that he had a very busy week and he didn't have the time. I think what a lot of our viewers and our readers have puzzled over is how could a father not find 5 or 10 minutes, even a man as busy as the King, to sit down and say hello to his son who's flown 6,000 miles. But that is often the royal way, and I think what people are neglecting to remember in all this is that the King is still having cancer treatment. He does still get tired, and meetings with his son are fraught, and there is no doubt they have remained that way for some time. And Camilla, the Queen, the King's close staff do not want him getting frazzled because of a conversation which goes wrong with Harry.
Well, there was an interesting piece in the Times, though, wasn't there, that suggested that the King, for all the reasons you've stated, had no time to meet Harry, but he did have time to meet David Beckham.
He's a very important public figure. He's clearly been lined up for some sort of charitable role with one of the King's foundations. I think that was a diaried engagement, a private engagement. Beckham went to see the King to discuss one of the foundations, am I right?
Yeah, about, I think, becoming an ambassador for the King's Foundation, yeah.
Well, he knows that David Beckham's not going to give him any grief, isn't he? You can have a very pleasant meeting with David Beckham, who, as we know, is always diplomatic, respectful. He'll enjoy it, they'll relax, have a cup of tea, talk about nice things, and he's not going to have all that, you know, drama.
So what you're saying is David Beckham is the son that King Charles never had.
Well, also, we won't hear David Beckham's version of events. We won't have spokesmen from California briefing about what they spoke about and all that type of thing. He can feel safe in David Beckham's presence, whereas he can't in the presence of his younger son, as we know.
Oh dear.
Sorry, Joe, to interrupt. I was going to say, I wrote a couple of pieces last year in which I said, you know, the King will always leave that door ajar because he's his son, and he, you know, despite what he's put him through, he does love him. But Charles's mentality is that and this was even pre-cancer, he's just going to put the whole Harry issue to one side. He's king now. He wants to make whatever time he's got left on the throne work for his people and for his country, and I think that's doubly so because now he's got his own cancer to contend with, and it doesn't mean he doesn't love him and one day they might not sort it out, but he's just got other things to deal with. And as Richard says, you know, Harry comes with a whole load of grief and concern, and trust is an issue, and it's like, look, I just don't need that at the moment.
And it's no coincidence that on the one occasion that the King has met his younger son since he has had the cancer treatment, the Queen was also there. You know, I think he feels, you know, he needs a witness almost when he's
and
in
of course
those
Harry went back to
meetings.
America and gave interviews about it. So.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
Harry wasn't the only relative giving the King a headache. Stories have swirled all year that the King wants to evict his brother Andrew from the palatial Royal Lodge and move him into the smaller Frogmore Cottage, previously used by Prince Harry.
It is quite dramatic. So yeah, Prince Andrew has been living in the Royal Lodge in Windsor for about 20 years, and the term lodge is slightly misleading because it's actually 30 bedrooms. You know, it's a pretty big house, and you can understand why he wants to stay there.
He needs those 30 rooms, doesn't he?
So he clearly thinks.
Yeah.
But the problem is, since he's not a working royal anymore, the public aren't funding him, and Andrew has his name on the lease for the lodge. So, but tied up with that is that he has responsibilities to maintain it. He has to have it painted every 2 years. And because it's so big, all of that is very, very expensive. And so what's been reported is that the King is not too keen to continue funding
Andrew. And so if he withdraws that money, how is Andrew going to pay for the Royal Lodge? But Andrew is basically saying, well, my name's on the lease, I'm going to stay here. The King is saying, well, I don't want you here, maybe you can go to Frogmore Cottage, where the Duke and Duchess of Sussex used to live, which is a bit smaller. But as we can see, he's not moved, so it's a stalemate.
It's kind of fascinating, really. Charlotte, is this resolvable? Could somebody like Fergie or Princess Eugenie or Beatrice make Andrew see sense, or do you think they're Team Andrew?
I think they're Team Andrew, and it's sort of in their interest for him to keep this very grand house because, first of all, Fergie lives there. Second of all, there's some suggestion, some reports that the girls might actually inherit it one day or inherit their lease over it. So they might sort of want to keep it in the York family. But I do think if somebody was to speak sense to him, it would be Fergie, because she's actually got this relationship with Charles now that's getting better and better and stronger. So she could be a bit of a mediator. But yes, as he said earlier, these are two of the stubbornest men in England. They're used to getting their own way. They haven't been told no. And the thing about Andrew is, we know this from the Newsnight, broadcast, that he really thinks of himself as this huge international statesman worthy of a 30-room lodge. And I just don't see him changing his mind on that. He thinks he's very important.
He must have had a bit of a reckoning on that, though. He must realise that that's not true.
You'd think that his ego would have deflated a little bit, but by all accounts it hasn't, and that's why he's refusing to move out.
Wow.
Remember that Princess Beatrice is married to a property developer, Edo Mapelli-Mozzi, and he sort of goes for very stylish, quite sort of minimalist places. So maybe he's got his eye on transforming the place.
Apparently he's been dabbling in this 30-room house and trying to make it over. But I mean, if you made over Royal Lodge from scratch, and apparently it is a bit the questionable taste. I
bet it's a big old chintz palace. Come on, I bet it is.
It would be a monumental undertaking. If you think Frogmore Cottage cost £2.4 million to redo, and it's a third of the size probably, hence why he doesn't want to move there. Even though apparently it's turnkey and it's beautiful. So if Edo was to redecorate it, we're talking like a multi-million-pound bill there.
Well, if he starts talking about moving Prince Andrew's teddies, there will be hell to pay.
Yeah, he won't have that.
Richard, I mean, some might say the phrase, the siege of Royal Lodge, is a bit much. But the King's apparently turning to military friends to seek advice.
This was an extraordinary line buried in this Sunday Times piece, is that the King has apparently consulted the Chief of the General Staff, the military chief, to see if he can help.
What, to send in the tanks?
That's what I'm not quite sure. But,
he means business, that is for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the idea. But the real question is, why is the King that bothered, frankly? Because there were suggestions that maybe it would be ideal for William and Catherine and their family to move into, because they're in Adelaide Cottage, which is much, much smaller. But from everything I hear, they don't really want it.
Yeah, but don't you think the King is frustrated because it's just a damn bad look that Andrew, non-working royal, has this enormous house?
But it's also a bad look for it to sit empty. And apartment 1 at Kensington Palace sits there empty like a white elephant. And if they have another massive royal residence just sitting empty, that's also a really bad look. It's quite a wasteful look. So actually, it's got to be occupied by somebody.
I'll move in.
Yeah,
no problem.
Is it big enough for you?
Yeah, I think so. Just about. Shoes.
It is a genuinely complicated issue because of security. So at the moment, the King's paying for Andrew and family to have security at Royal Lodge, but because of its proximity to the castle and it's just near the Royal Chapel and so forth, that it'd be very hard to let it out privately. In the past, they've thought it would be impossible.
If you like great royal content, you might want to know about our brand new show featuring our very own Richard Eden here on the Daily Mail Royals YouTube channel. Check this out.
We know how much you love looking at royal photographs. So join me for a special programme as I take a fresh look at the fallout between Prince William and Prince Harry through some of their most fascinating pictures and rarely seen moments. It's called Reading the Royals, and you can watch it here on the Daily Mail Royals channel.
With his father having to restrict the amount of duties he can carry out, Prince William was praised for his statesman-like appearance at the D-Day commemorations in France, while there were question marks over whether the wife of the French president made a faux pas with the Queen.
And yeah, it was. I had a big piece for the Mail about it last week because my colleague Robert Hardman was covering the King, and I thought actually this is a very big test for William. I would argue it's his biggest kind of role he's had on the international stage, certainly since becoming heir to the throne. But I would say even before that. And I think he did a really great job. Basically, the King was out there, of course, and he was covering the British event, but his doctors have said to him, look, it's going to be a bit much trying to do the big international event at Omaha Beach in the afternoon. So William deputised. He was in doing the Canadian event in Juneau Beach in the morning, and then joined Biden, Zelensky, Macron, and I think I counted 7 presidents in the afternoon. There was a Grand Duke, several Crown Princes, a King, and there was our William. And I thought he was incredibly statesmanlike and dignified when he needed to be, but where he is very good is with the veterans himself, incredibly respectful, but very approachable, and really wanted to listen to these men's incredible stories. So, I think it was a big tick for him.
Amazing. Now, Richard, William has been praised from all sorts of quarters, hasn't he, for his statesman-like appearance?
People have sort of said, he's entering his sort of statesman era. And I think, obviously it's
eras are very popular with Taylor Swift in town. Everyone's got to have one.
I think, it's sad in a way that he's having to stand in for his father. Ideally we would like to see the King carrying out these duties, but it's been really reassuring to have him, William, doing them. He's carried them off with aplomb, and I think it hasn't just been in Normandy as well. There have been other events this week. There was one very statesman-like photograph that they published from their official account of him on the way to an engagement in Wales. And I think, it's just reassuring that we have someone ready to deputise and who looks the part.
It's interesting, isn't it, Charlotte? Even since William was a schoolboy, he's been described invariably as the reluctant royal. But in events like this, he really steps up. He does deliver. Do you think he is so reluctant?
I think he was for years reluctant, because there was always this context of how to delay him becoming an active royal. Do you remember when he was at university, of course, he had to be protected. Then when he was a helicopter pilot and he lived with Kate in Wales very remotely, it was all about delaying that moment when he has to be, a king in waiting, so that he could have as normal a life as possible. But I think that's sort of over now. I think this is the moment he's going to emerge as a future king, and I think it's been a long process of accepting, I think, for him, but I think he's sort of there, he's done it now.
Now, obviously, lots of effusiveness for William there from our panel and all sorts of places, but Rebecca, the French president's wife, Brigitte Macron, came in for a bit of a dig, didn't she, over a supposed faux pas involving Camilla.
Yeah, and actually there's a few critics of Queen Camilla as well. It was, I'll be honest, it was a little bit awkward. They were standing paying their respects at the memorial at the British event on Thursday morning, and as they turned to walk away, Brigitte Macron kind of put out her hand to try and kind of almost like hold Camilla's hand or just kind of show her the way, and Camilla didn't really respond. But what it was down to actually was that Queen Camilla's done a lot of these memorials in her time, and you should never actually turn your back on them. So she was walking backwards while Brigitte Macron was kind of turning away from it slightly. So I think she was just trying to keep her lane, for want of a better word. It was a little bit awkward, but I was with the women in Paris last year and they got to know each other very well, and there was a genuinely warm relationship there. And I think at the end of the day, it's almost a bit unseemly to kind of go on about it, because they were there actually respecting, the thousands of men who laid down their lives for their respective countries.
The surprise return of Catherine to the stage for Trooping the Colour gave the royals and the nation a boost. Here, our panel discussed that and a beautiful new portrait of the princess. Rebecca starts this off by explaining what she was told by palace staff.
They were stressing, look, this is not a return to work, and that was something they were very, very keen to stress. It's not a full-time return to work, but it is a signal she now feels slightly well enough to maybe dip her toes in a little bit over the coming months.
You called it.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's my job, isn't it?
Scoop English over here. Natasha, you were there. Tell us, what was the atmosphere like, and what do you think having Catherine there meant to the crowd? Do you think it made a palpable difference?
Yeah, there had been biblical rain just before they came out on the balcony, so the fact that so many people were still there and so excited because they knew that the Princess of Wales was going to be there and come out with all 3 kids, people were still so excited, and the group that I was with, there were loads of scouts and kind of young children, and people were jumping up and down, they were waving, and people were just ecstatic, and I was, chilled to the bone from this rain, and yet the atmosphere was still, so celebratory.
Did you detect detect any kind of emotion on Catherine's face? Did she feel
her smile
loved by the crowd?
Her smile is so wide that even from where I was standing, it just was glowing. Honestly, it's incredible. So yeah, she just looked delighted. They looked like a really happy family. It was genuinely just really nice to see.
Richard, it was reported, wasn't it, that Catherine's return to the public eye was such a significant moment that the palace was duty-bound to tell the Prime Minister and our opposition parties.
Yes, that really does make it sound serious, doesn't it? But there's a reason for that. We're in the middle of a general election campaign, and viewers might remember that the royal family have had to cancel various engagements because they can't do anything that might overshadow election coverage or also that might look favourable to one party or another. So in this case, you can imagine that Catherine's reappearance for the first time in public since Christmas Day last year was a huge event that did dominate the newspapers. It was dominated the front page on Saturday as well as Sunday. So that did kind of blow away the political coverage. So I think the Prime Minister had to be warned about that, and he let the opposition party leaders know as well.
Fascinating.
But I think they took the view that, look, trooping the colour, is a celebration, it's part of our national life. So I think all the political leaders were happy for trooping the colour to go ahead, and the fact that Catherine was part of that delighted all of them. I think they shared in the public's joy to have her back with us.
Absolutely. Rebecca, she also released a statement. What can you tell us about that? What were the sort of key points that she wanted to make?
I thought there was a really kind of moving and kind of painfully honest statement. She made a point of saying the messages that she and William have received over recent weeks and months have meant an enormous lot to them, and that has helped them get through some really tough times as a family. She wanted people to know that she is making good progress, but she was also really candid and said, this has not been easy, and like anyone who's undergoing cancer treatment will know, is you have good days and you have bad days, and on the bad days you want to curl up in a ball and lie in bed, but on the good days you want to seize life and make the most of your time with your family and children. And she said she's having to learn to be patient as well, that there is a lot of uncertainty around this treatment, and she was having to learn to pace herself. And I think in that she was making the point again, saying, look, I am going to be at trooping. I do hope to do a couple more events over the summer. But she was basically saying to the public, please bear with me.
Yeah, no promises. Richard, we also got a new portrait. What can you tell us about that?
Well, just like Rebecca says about the statement, that it was so honest, I felt also an incredibly moving portrait. It was a photograph taken by Matt Porteous, and he loves nature, and he took a wonderful portrait of Catherine with the 3 children in a tree last year.
Yes.
And again, a tree featured heavily in this portrait, which was a weeping willow. Catherine, of course, was a student of history of art, so she knows all about the symbolism of weeping willows. There's references to grief. The fact that the pose is her sort of looking upwards very wistfully. I think it was showing sort of what an important part that nature and being at Windsor's playing in her recovery, but also I think it shows that, yes, she's not out of the woods. There's the reference to the tree and the water, and she's going through a hard time. So it was laden with symbolism, I would say.
It was very reflective, I thought. Like she rightly say, looking wistfully up at the
Well, also
the sky.
remember, every photograph we ever see of Catherine, she's usually looking direct at the camera, often, with a beautiful smile.
Yeah, true.
And in this case, she wasn't. And it's very moving. I would say it's probably the most symbolic picture we've ever had of Catherine.
The royal family suffered another health crisis as the usually indomitable Princess Anne suffered a serious injury involving a horse. Rebecca English tells us how she found out.
Well, I'm not going to lie. I got a message on Monday just to say, heads up, there's going to be a statement about the Princess Royal coming out imminently. Nothing else. And my stomach did a flip-flop, I'm not going to lie, especially after this last year, because there are only two other times I've had a similar heads up this year. It was, I couldn't think what on earth it would be. So we were pretty shocked to find out that she had been involved in an incident at her Gatcombe Park estate on Sunday night. She was out walking about 9:15, lovely summer's evening in the UK, and it looks like she was either struck by the head or the legs of a horse. And I say looks like, we don't know, because she suffered terrible concussion and minor head injuries and can't actually remember what led up to the incident. But what we do know is that she did receive emergency treatment on the estate on the night, and it was deemed necessary to rush her to hospital by ambulance to Bristol, which is about 45 minutes drive away from her, but it is a major trauma response centre and does have neuro specialists there, and she remains there as you know, today is when we're filming the programme.
I feel slightly like it's my fault. I do remember last week saying what person or beast would mess with Princess Anne, and here we are. I mean, horses are scary. They really are. Richard, it's been pointed out, though, that this isn't Anne's first visit to hospital, and she's not massively known as a very patient patient.
No, I mean, she was involved in a very serious accident involving a horse before, where she came off her horse while riding and the horse fell on top of her. She had a sort of hairline fracture of a vertebrae, I think, and again she was concussed. But in a sign of how strong she is, this was the year, I think 1976, when she then went on to compete at the Montreal Olympics in Canada. But obviously that's a long, long time ago, and concussion, as you get older, she's in her 70s now, of course it's being taken very seriously, so it is worrying. But yes, there have been reports about when she's been in hospital before and she has, you know, not wanted any nonsense, she's just, you know, let's get on with it type of thing. But we've seen her husband, Tim Lawrence, visiting her twice, Zara visiting, so we know it's serious.
Oh God, I hope she's all right though.
I mean, on a more kind of slightly light-hearted note, what I did love is when Tim Lawrence visited her on the first occasion, he was carrying this kind of blue plastic cool box, the kind of thing that we've all got shoved away at the back of one of our cupboards somewhere. And when he was asked, he said, "Oh, it's just a few treats from home." And I just love the fact that Princess Anne is having a lunch basically bought in a normal cool box to the hospital, like any of us would.
Well, come on, yeah, hospital food can be quite boring.
What do you think's in there? Nice Kit Kat crunchy? What? Yeah.
And of course, it's worth pointing out she's in an NHS hospital, which is effectively a state hospital here. So it's not a kind of big fancy private facility. There's no major security there. She really is there as pretty much as another patient. So
in a tough year, there was some time for fun for the royals. One such occasion was when Prince William took Prince George and Princess Charlotte to see and meet Taylor Swift.
Am I the only person who didn't go to this concert?
I think you might have been, yes.
So I had an inkling again on Friday night he was going, and I messaged someone and said, "Is William at the Taylor Swift concert?" And I got a message back going, "Well, we wouldn't guide on his private time." And I was thinking, he's there. He's definitely there with the kids. And we didn't have confirmation until officially till the next morning, when the royal correspondence received a message saying, "You might want to keep an eye out on social media. There will be a picture." And lo and behold, there was a brilliant selfie of William with George, Charlotte and Taylor Swift and her beau, Travis Kelce, if I pronounced that right, which you explained to me was a very, very big deal.
Well, I think it was quite a big step for her to put him in such a photo that was definitely going to go global. Now, this selfie with Taylor, Richard, shot with the royals, it did have that spontaneous feel to it, but something tells me about what I know about Camp Taylor as well, that it probably wasn't that straightforward, was it?
No, I'm sure it took lots of organisation. I think, you know, it was Taylor Swift who had invited Prince William and his children to attend her concert. Remember, they do know each other, that Taylor Swift had sung at a charity concert at Kensington Palace about 10 years ago.
And dragged William on stage with her.
Yes, that didn't happen last Friday. And no William on stage.
Although we did see some great dad dancing, didn't we? Yeah.
But I'm sure this selfie that was put on social media would have taken a bit of organisation. And there were things like, actually, the outfit she was wearing in the picture was quite demure. You know, it was a sort of jacket rather than a more outrageous stage costume.
It was over, I know those costumes very well, I am a Swiftie. It was over a very skimpy leotard and boots.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So the fact she was wearing the jacket probably suggests she knows that generally they're social media is quite modest. So that again would suggest a bit of organisation.
And we did get more of an account of what happened from Taylor's boyfriend Travis, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah, this was quite a relaxed account of their encounter, and I think before he was certainly not very interested in royalty or anything like that. But he made the point in a podcast with his brother Jason that he was actually quite sort of too nervous to speak, and he put his beer down, And
Well, that is serious.
and talked about your Royal Highness. Described William in some colourful language that I won't repeat on a family programme. But anyway, he seemed to be impressed, and I think there is that kind of aura of royalty that seemed to impress Travis.
Sorry, I was going to say, you effectively said William was a very cool dad, and he also said, didn't he, I thought it was really sweet, that he was really impressed with Princess Charlotte. He basically thought she was a little firecracker, was asking lots of questions, and was really, really taken by her, which I thought was lovely.
I think I suspect that it might be Princess Charlotte who's the big Taylor Swift fan in the family.
Indeed.
Well,
the smiles on their
I
faces,
know.
they really must have had the best night.
And they've not had the easiest year, have
Yeah.
they? Everything they've gone through with their mother and their grandfather. And it does remind me of the days that Princess Diana used to take William and Harry to concerts. That was quite kind of revolutionary at the time, and I think it's nice that William is doing that, and I think he would have got a lot of cool dad points for taking them to something like that.
Yeah, it's a shame that Catherine didn't go with them, but she stayed behind to look after Louis, who is probably a bit young really for
Oh, I
pop
don't know.
concert.
I would have loved to see Louis dancing at that concert.
He would have had a
wouldn't
great
He would have
time.
been
Do you know
doing his
what?
little
3 hours, 3.5 hours, I think, and the atmosphere is just, if you need cheering up, go to a Taylor Swift concert.
Oh, I'm sure they'll take Louis next time Taylor's over.
Indeed. Well, she's doing more dates at Wembley soon. Can't wait. Now, you've been up to mischief again, Richard Eden. You've written about William's friendship with Taylor and compared it to celebrity friendships of his brother across the pond.
I was just making the point in my article for Mail Plus and the newsletter that it's a very different relationship, because essentially Taylor Swift's here and she wants to show her respect for the royal family, and in a way you could say sort of paying court to Prince William. Whereas with Harry and Meghan, I think it's the other way round, that they're the ones that always seem to be sucking up to the Hollywood royalty. They thought, I think when they moved to California, we'll be at the centre of this kind of royal court and everyone will be coming to see us. But it never seems to be working out like that. You often see them at concerts, or I remember we've actually seen them when they met Beyonce and Jay-Z, and it was a Disney premiere. And they were using the occasion to suck up to these bigwigs trying to get work for Meghan.
Well, I will say that William certainly looked like he was having more of a whale of a time at Taylor than Harry looked when he went to Beyonce, doesn't it? Do you remember?
That is definitely true, but people do say it's a bit unfair that you can see other pictures of Harry where he was having a jolly time. So
Okay,
it was just one picture.
But while we're on the subject, Rebecca, it is noticeable, isn't it, that William's friendships are unlike those of his brother or even his father.
Yeah, I mean, so William has a very close-knit circle of friends. They're all, kind of landed gentry types, the kind of as they were once described, the Norfolk turnip toffs. But they are very close-knit and very loyal, and it's very difficult to get genuine stories out of this group of people because they are.
I've been trying for 20 years.
they are very discreet and very protective, and I think when he does these celebrity moments, I think what's interesting is he does it, and they knew that selfie would break the internet. In fact, I even joked with someone in his team. I said, like, how many times can you break the internet in 1 week? This is the third time you've done it. So I think he does it, but then he doesn't kind of labour it, and I think that's the difference. He does it, makes the point, look, the kids were here, it's Taylor's everyone, in London, everyone's talking about it, it's a bit of fun, and then we'll just go back off to the rest of our normal lives. He doesn't seem to want to kind of squeeze any more out of it, which I think goes back to the point that you were making about Harry and Meghan, and it did make me think of that moment in their Netflix documentary when they were sitting at a desk together. Do you remember? And then kind of Harry goes, oh, surprise, she's got a text message. Oh, it's off Beyonce, with this kind of terrible hammy acting. And, she goes, oh, well, I might just read it out. It says how wonderful I am, which to me was one of the standout cringe moments of that documentary. And I did think how differently William handled that star moment on Friday night.
The King and Queen's visit to the normally sleepy Channel Islands was interrupted not once, but twice. The first by a pair of amorous cows and the second by a security scare, Rebecca explains.
So we were in the Channel Islands, Crown dependency, you know, big day planned, and there was a thing called Jersey Expo, which they were highlighting all the best of Jersey's agriculture and aquaculture. And there was a pen of 7 Jersey cows.
I think we're showing the viewers that clip now, so yeah.
7 Jersey heifers. And
Heifers. I love
and
that
they
word.
will be given to the King as a present by the dairy farmers of Jersey. But just as Queen Camilla bent down to stroke one of these cows, and they are very beautiful, they've got kind of big Disney eyes and beautiful golden fur, one cow did what cows sometimes do and jumped on the other one right in front of her.
Look, I'll be honest, I could get aroused just thinking about Jersey clotted cream. I don't know about you. Yeah.
That's a whole other programme.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And to be fair, she handled it really well. I mean, because I was standing behind the cow, so I mean, I really did get a bird's eye view of this. And we kind of caught each other's eyes, and she just absolutely corpsed. Because of course, everything is very scripted on these things, and they quite like it when things don't really go to plan. I don't think they quite, expected that, but she did. She took it in her stride.
I love that animals just, they don't really recognise royalty, do they?
They do what they do.
They do what cows will do. What cows do, but also on a more sombre, serious note, there was a security scare. What on earth?
I genuinely and honestly, I saw some scepticism online about this. I have never seen anything like this happen in 20 years of covering the royals. And in fact, I actually asked, some of the police officers there, and they said, we've only ever seen this done once. So basically, we were at that same Jersey Expo, and I was with the King at that point, and suddenly I saw a police officer come up to him and whisper something in his ear, and they just started walking really quickly. So past all the people that were waiting to be introduced to him, and of course everyone was looking a little bit puzzled, and you could instantly tell something was up. And then I kind of moved over, because to my right there was Queen Camilla, and she was just tucking into an ice cream that she'd been given, and I saw her protection officer go up to her and actually say to her, you have got to leave now.
Wow.
And you could see the Queen's face was a little bit like, oh, well, I'm just eating my ice cream, can I finish it? It was very nice ice cream. And I heard them say, credible threat now. So you could hear everything click into action, and she was rushed out, again, past the people waiting, to a nearby hotel that they were going to stay in anyway, but clearly that must have been the designated safe spot. And what it turns out is that there was some unidentified person on a roof, and obviously given everything that's just happened in America, they weren't taking any chances. And someone said to me later, it was a big call for the Jersey police to make, but they 100% did the right thing. And what the palace then said is they made a point of bringing everyone they'd been due to meet to the hotel to meet them, because obviously otherwise they'd missed out on their chance. I mean, it was momentaneous. They picked up the programme within a couple of minutes, but it was quite a stark reminder of actually the threats that these people face day in, day out, that we kind of take for granted.
Catherine received another rapturous reception when she returned to her beloved Wimbledon tennis championships. Richard Eden explains.
For Catherine, it was a very moving moment, actually. There was a standing ovation for her. She came with Princess Charlotte and her sister Pippa, and you could tell, genuinely, I think wasn't the only one who probably spotted a tear rolling down Catherine's cheek as she appreciated this gesture from everyone there. So it was a big moment for everyone, and very touching to watch.
And can we just say, shallow moment for me, I loved her dress. I
loved
loved
that
purple
Wimbledon
dress.
purple. It
Absolutely
was just the
beautiful.
colour of Wimbledon.
And actually, she'd got it slightly adapted, because the original one was V-neck, but she'd had it done in this kind of, straight up there, and I thought it kind of suited her really well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, tell us, Rebecca, about the planning of this. What would have been the contingencies if it was it quite touch and go, do you think, up until the last minute?
Well, as I think we've talked about it on the programme a little bit, and I kind of hinted as strongly as I could that I was pretty sure that she was going to go, which was the kind of general sense of the direction of travel that I was getting. But of course, you know, as Kensington Palace was always stressing, when you're going through chemotherapy treatment, which she is, you know, sometimes you're just not going to know how you feel till you wake up on the day. Yeah. So they could, you know, never say never. But obviously they had got contingency plans for the Duchess of Gloucester, who's long been associated with Wimbledon and is a big fan. But of course, everyone really wanted to see Catherine. And like Richard said, I was actually very moved to see that standing ovation for her, because it was so genuine and so heartfelt. And people just did it instantaneously. And I think they just wanted to show a little bit of solidarity with her as a woman in the public eye and what she's going through.
I think one of the only positive sides of her health crisis has just been, perhaps it's been a chance for her to appreciate how loved she is, actually. Yeah. But often you don't get that, do you, in sort of daily life, but I think that probably really brought it home to her.
It's amazing. What do you think now, Rebecca? Do you think she'll probably take the rest of summer now, take more time to just genuinely recover? No speculation about what she will and won't turn up to now?
No, that's it now, for both of them, actually. They're both on summer holidays with their children. I think much needed, because there has been, you know, such difficult times for them this year. I think, again, what was lovely is her taking Princess Charlotte with her and seeing that lovely bond between her and her daughter, because this has been a huge strain on the children as well this year. You know, as she said herself in that first statement about the whole issue, it was almost tougher to find a way to tell their children that Mummy was going through this difficult period as it was about getting the news herself. So how lovely that, you know, we could just see them there being so happy and knowing, hopefully, as a family, they're coming through the other end of this.
I like Charlotte's sunglasses, by the way. They were very chic.
Yeah, they were Ray-Bans. Ray-Ban. They were very cool, actually. I think there was a bit of a rum on them as well.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm not surprised.
She is a style star in the making, for sure.
Yeah.
It seemed that the reception to Prince Harry being given the Pat Tillman Award wasn't so universally well received. Here, Richard Eden and Charlotte Griffiths explain.
This was really interesting. This was when he stood up to collect the award. They announced it. He stood up. Lots of others rose to their feet, including Meghan. She was clapping away. But one person who didn't stand up at all and didn't appear to be clapping either was the tennis legend Venus Williams.
What, the only one?
She stayed in her seat. She was surrounded by others, yes, who did get up, and she didn't appear to be clapping either. So it's very mysterious. I mean, we should make clear, so she was there because her sister Serena was presenting the award, so presumably she attended to support her sister. And it's Serena generally who's been thought to be a close friend of Meghan. So it does make you wonder what's going on there, and perhaps Venus shared the thoughts of lots of others who thought it wasn't appropriate that Prince Harry received this award.
Has she made any comment about it?
No,
right.
I'm sure she didn't want to embarrass her sister.
Goodness me. Well, Charlotte, given the huge amount of, and it seems largely negative publicity about this award, Harry and Meghan, they have to be wondering whether or not these things are worth it, surely.
No, I think Harry is definitely wondering that, because he hated every minute of getting on that stage.
How do you know that?
Because I've watched the video. He's a face of thunder, he's exhaling, he looks really miserable, and at one point he pulls away from Meghan, who's got his arm, and he just sort of like snatches his arm away, and he just seemed tense and like he wasn't enjoying it. And not for the first time has he looked a little bit apprehensive before going on stage. And I just wonder whether he really enjoys these things anymore. And of course there's the controversy. I mean, it's a PR disaster to have, you know, Pat Tillman's mum saying it's not a good idea for him to receive the award, and potentially to have Venus Williams not clapping right next to him. I just don't think they're worth it at all for them anymore.
And was it as we predicted that he really sort of like laboured that it was an award for Invictus?
Yeah, he definitely made that point, and he really wanted to say he was accepting it on behalf of an amazing cause, which Invictus is, and he had people from Invictus around him, which is probably very wise. But then, even then, people said, oh, you only brought people from Invictus on to sort of deflect from yourself. So he can't really win.
Well, that's a bit tiresome.
Yeah, and whether you think that's very unfair or not, the point is, these aren't PR wins for the Sussexes. They just can't win. That must be incredibly frustrating for them, and they probably feel very hard done by. But the PR strategy going forward has got to be knock these things on the head.
And remember, what they could have done is they could have given the award to the Invictus Foundation, and then Harry could have let someone else from the organisation collect the award, couldn't he? So, you know, rather than
Possibly
say, oh,
not
it's
as much publicity in that.
No, but rather than say, oh, it's not all about me, he could have shown that by letting someone else collect it.
Some of the most joyful royal engagements with the public are at the royal garden parties. Here are some of our favourite images of those over the years. So good you could rewind and watch that all again. A reminder to like and subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals YouTube channel. It really helps us. And check out our new show, Reading the Royals. We look forward to seeing you again on Palace Confidential next week. Bye for now.